The chamber is open and full of whispers. Not stone and snakes this time, but a black, glistening lake and the soft drag of dead hands beneath the surface. Regulus Black is choking. The potion burns his throat, claws at his veins, rips memory into shards. He clutches the fake locket to his chest as if pressure alone can force courage into his ribs. Around him the water bulges. Fingers, faces, Inferi rising in perfect, merciless silence. Creature screamed once already. He doesn't now. The little elf stands on the rock, eyes huge, hands shaking as the lake erupts. White, waterlogged bodies claw toward Regulus, toward the warmth of his living skin, toward the traitor who dared touch their master's spell. This is supposed to be the night everything changed by ending him. Regulus knows it.
Voldemort sent him here to die, wrapped in orders and flattery, trusting the cave to finish what the Dark Lord would not sully his own hands with. This was the plan. Drink, replace the locket, collapse under the potion. Let the Inferi drag the evidence and the inconvenience into the dark. But what if that most obedient black son makes one different choice? He hits the stone, knees cracking, vision swimming. The potion shows him Sirius dead, his parents dead, creature burning, Harry Potter screaming in a crib he has never seen. Grief cuts through the grief like a knife, folding in on itself until only one thought remains. Not like this. Creature, he rasps, tongue numb, lungs flooding with cold air and terror. Come here.
Now. The elf appears at his side with a crack, tugged by the command even as his gaze darts to the reaching hands just below the surface. One more second, and they will have Regulus's ankles. What if Regulus doesn't surrender? What if the boy who once wore the dark mark remembers that he is also heir of the ancient and noble House of Black, that his bloodline guarded secrets long before Voldemort learned the word Horcrux? He drags his wand up. It's slick with lake water, the U dark against his whitening knuckles. He can't remember the incantation properly. It's an old family escape spell, half forbidden, muttered once at a Christmas table by a drunken uncle boasting about duels and vanished bodies. Fragment, a name, a twist of intent. Side along, he thinks. Blood to blood, house to house. Creature, he whispers, throat tearing. Hold on, by black blood and bound soul, away. The magic slams through him. The world tears. For one blinding instant, he is nowhere and everywhere, pressed between the dead lake and the front steps of Grimmauld Place, between Voldemort's war and a different story entirely. He hits stone again. This time it's wet London pavement, not cave rock. Rain needles his face. He is half drowned, coughing up black water, the fake locket still welded to his palm. His wand lies beside him, cracked clean along the grain, its core exposed like a broken bone. Creature crouches over him, sobbing, tugging at his robes. Master Regulus! Master Regulus! You is hurt, you is— I'm alive, Regulus croaks, and the realization is a shock.
Voldemort meant for him to die there. No jewel, no glory, just a quiet erasure under a cursed lake. He stares at the locket, at the cheap, lying gleam of the metal, a decoy in his hand, the real piece of soul still out there. A child in a crib somewhere, marked for slaughter, another pawn waiting to be spent. What if he refuses to let that happen? On a dark, muggle street, shivering and alone, Regulus Black makes the only vow that has ever truly been his. No more children, he whispers to the rain, to Creature, to the war itself. No child will be used the way I was. Not by him, not by anyone. In that moment, he does more than survive a cave.
He plants the first fragile seed of a future where the boy who lived will one day be the boy he claims, protects, and arms against the Dark Lord himself. This is that story. What if the wrong black brother lived? Zoom out from the cave for a moment, from the blood on the rocks, from the Inferi just beneath the black water. Because the real question isn't only how Regulus survives that night, it's this. What if the black brother who walked away from Voldemort, not the one who broke out of Azkaban, became Harry Potter's family? In canon, Harry grows up in a cupboard, staring at spiders and counting the cracks in the ceiling. He survives on scraps and silence. No wand, no spell, no one saying his name with pride.
His childhood is a long, dull ache of neglect that never quite heals. Even when Hogwarts arrives to tell him he's famous. He enters the war untrained, underinformed, and already convinced that his pain is just the price of being alive. Now shift the frame. Harry in an ancient townhouse whose walls remember centuries of magic. Grimmauld Place, heavy drapes, ancestral portraits, the Black family crest staring down from polished stone. He is not the unwanted nephew in a Muggle suburb. He is the ward of the heir of the ancient and noble house of Black. The boy who lived, raised where the old bloodlines whisper about power, duty, and the cost of choosing the wrong master. Regulus is not Sirius. Sirius ran from this house screaming. Regulus was built by it. He wore the mark.
He followed Voldemort into the dark and only turned back when he saw the truth in a basin of poison and a locket that should never have existed. In this story, he survives the cave and lets the world think he's dead, using creature and old black magic to vanish from both Death Eaters and the Order. The night everything changed for him does not end in a lake. It ends in a vow. He will not be a martyr. He will be a weapon, and he will forge another. When Regulus claims Harry, it is not an act of sentiment. It is a calculated, desperate choice. Blood adoption rituals instead of blood wards on a Muggle doorstep. Layers of wards woven through black stone rather than hope pinned to Petunia Dursley's reluctance to let her sister's child die. Regulus understands Horcruxes years before Dumbledore does. He understands Death Eaters because he was one. He understands how boys are turned into soldiers because he was. So this Harry does not grow up in ignorance. He learns pure-blood etiquette at the same table where he learns the unforgivables by name and why he must never cast them. He practices dueling in the drawing room under the sharp gaze of a former Death Eater who corrects his stance, his footwork, his hesitation. He is taught about Slytherin, about ambition and survival, not as sins but as tools that can cut through the grief like a knife if wielded with care. And crucially, Regulus does not trust Albus Dumbledore. That single fracture changes the war. No unquestioned headmaster guiding Harry's every step.
No childhood shaped by half-truths and delayed revelations. Instead, a boy raised to question, to read the prophet for subtext, to recognize ministry corruption and pure blood hypocrisy, because he hears it at his own dinner table and learns how to answer it. What if the chosen one walked into Hogwarts already trained, politically aware, and fiercely protected by a guardian who will not let him be anyone's pawn again? This is that story. And the first real test of it begins the moment Dumbledore realizes Harry Potter is not where he left him, or who he expected him to be. November 1st, 1981. The night two futures collide. November 1st, 1981. The night everything changed. The cottage at Godric's Hollow was no longer a home. One wall blown out, roof sagging, smoke still curling in thin, bitter threads toward a cold sky. The garden gate hung twisted, glass glittered on the path. Inside, spells had scorched the wallpaper and blackened family photos, freezing laughter in cracked frames. James lay in the entrance hall, wand still in his hand, eyes open and unseeing. Lily was upstairs, crumpled by Harry's cot, her hair a bright spill against the ruined floorboards. The house held that awful, ringing silence you only get after someone has screamed themselves out of life. The war had come here and left 2 heroes dead and 1 legend behind. Canon says the legend goes to Privet Drive, so pause, reset. We've left the cave where Regulus Black should have died. We're not in the shadows with cursed green fire anymore. We're here, the night after Voldemort falls, at the exact moment the story is supposed to lock into place. Blood wards, Dursleys, a cupboard under the stairs. This is the fork in the road. This is the choice that for 20 years has gone unquestioned. Outside, beneath the broken roof, baby Harry Potter cried under the stars. His forehead was split by a raw, angry cut that would soon settle into a scar. Ash dusted his pajamas, his tiny fists opened and closed, reaching for parents who would never answer. Somewhere far from Godric's Hollow, Creature felt the pull of a name and a command that should not have existed. Regulus Black, who had walked into the cave and refused to die there, gripped the elf's bony shoulder.
The whispers had reached him even in hiding. The Dark Lord fallen, the Potters attacked, The boy who lived. Rumour and terror moving through Nocturne, through the old pure-blood houses, through every corridor of his guilt. He had seen what Voldemort hid in that lake. He had ordered Kreacher to destroy the locket and fake his death. He had thought the war would end with him gone, debts unpaid. But when you know about Horcruxes, you don't believe in easy endings. You don't trust Albus Dumbledore with the only child the Dark Lord ever personally marked. "Take me there," he told Kreacher. His voice cut through the grief like a knife. To the Potters, a crack of displaced air. Then the ruined lane of Godric's Hollow.
Regulus stepped onto the cold ground in borrowed Muggle boots, cloak snapping in the wind, heart hammering in a chest that had expected to be dead already. He stared at the blasted cottage and saw not victory, but a battlefield someone was trying to tidy away. Inside, he moved past James without flinching, but the set of his jaw betrayed him. He had known this boy. Quidditch, sneers, schoolyard duels. War had made them enemies on paper, never in his bones. He knelt once, briefly, in something like apology, then climbed the stairs. Lily's body stopped him, the tenderness of her outstretched hand. The way she had fallen between the door and the cot told the whole story more clearly than any spell report. Regulus swallowed. He had followed the Dark Lord, but he understood this kind of courage. He had tried, too late, to echo it. Harry's cry hit him then, thin, furious, alive. He stepped into the nursery, saw the ruin of the ceiling, the scorched crib, the boy with ash in his hair, and that jagged mark burning on his brow. The legend, before it knew it was a legend. This is where canon says Dumbledore wins. Blood magic, a suburban prison, a childhood of neglect in the name of protection. But what if, in that instant, something else took root? What if the heir of Black, already at war with his own past, looked at the boy who lived and made a different choice? What if, standing in the ruins of the Potter's life, Regulus Black decided this child would not be left to Albus Dumbledore at all? When Regulus reaches for Harry, when his hand closes, not in duty but in defiance, what new war begins? The claim, Regulus versus Dumbledore, over Harry's future. Privet Drive, midnight. The night everything changed. The street is quiet, all yellow lamplight and clipped hedges, when the war finally catches up to Surrey. Dumbledore stands at the end of the road, robes muted to a sober grey, watching the orange glow of a street lamp flicker against the bundle in Hagrid's arms. McGonagall stares down the row of houses, jaw tight, her Animagus eyes still seeing the tabby cat vantage from the brick wall. "This boy will be famous," she whispers, almost accusing. "Every child in our world will know his name, which is precisely why he must be hidden," Dumbledore answers.
His voice is soft, but the choice is already made. Lily's blood, Petunia's roof, the old magic of sacrifice. To him, it is the only story that ends with Harry alive. Hagrid shifts, cradling Harry closer. The baby gives a tiny, broken-sounding sigh in his sleep that cuts through the grief like a knife. For a heartbeat, even McGonagall wavers. What if there were another way? The air snaps. A crack of displaced space, sharp in the suburban silence. Dumbledore's wand is in his hand before the echo fades. McGonagall gasps. Hagrid half turns, shielding the bundle with his enormous body. Regulus Black steps out of the darkness. Not dead in a cave. Not a name on a tapestry burned through. He is pale, thinner than he should be at 20, eyes shadowed by things he will not say.
Kreacher appears at his elbow with a second, softer pop, clutching a leather folio and staring at Harry with a reverence that borders on terror. "Albus," Regulus says, as if they are meeting in a drawing room and not at the edge of a Muggle pavement. "You move quickly, but not quickly enough." Dumbledore's eyes narrow behind his half-moon glasses. "Regulus, we believed you dead." "You were meant to." A flicker of something, war, poison, green light on black water, crosses Regulus's face. He pushes it down. "But we can discuss my obituary later. We need to speak of guardianship." McGonagall finds her voice first. Guardianship? Mr. Black, this child is to be left with his aunt and uncle. It's been arranged. Regulus doesn't argue. He opens the folio. Old parchment, thick as skin, unfurls in the cold air. Family crests glitter faintly in Dumbledore's wand light. The rearing stallion of Potter, the star-strewn shield of Black. Creature holds the bottom edge steady with gnarled fingers, chest puffed with a grim, brittle pride. By Black family law, Regulus says, every syllable precise. The heir of an ancient and noble house may claim magical wardship over an orphaned minor of equal or allied blood, if no parent-designated guardian is both living and legally competent. James Potter named Sirius Black godfather. Sirius is imprisoned without trial. Therefore, wardship defaults to the next Black heir. He taps a clause written in spidery, archaic Latin. Dumbledore reads it, and his silence is louder than any spell.
Harry James Potter, Regulus continues, is descended from the Peverills through his father. The Peverills intermarried with the Blacks 5 times. Blood ties exist. The House of Black claims him. Dumbledore's gaze is flint. Blood alone is not enough. Lily's sacrifice created a protection that can only be sealed by her sister's home. Petunia Dursley is a muggle who despised magic before it killed her sister. Regulus cuts in, voice suddenly sharp. You would put the boy who lived in a house that hates what he is. Hide him. Diminish him. Let him grow up staring at bars instead of wards. Hagrid's grip tightens. He has seen those bars in Dumbledore's plan, though he doesn't know it yet.
Regulus steps closer, into the circle of light, so Dumbledore can see the raw conviction in his eyes. I wore the dark mark. I know what real monsters look like. I will not see another child broken to make your war easier to manage. What if the Muggle world is precisely what keeps him alive? Dumbledore asks quietly. What if anonymity is the only shield that holds? Regulus doesn't flinch. Then we build better shields. Ancient black wards. Blood rituals you've forgotten or refused to use. Creature is bound to our house. He can move the boy without trace. Hide him where no ministry quill will ever record his name. I am not asking your permission, Headmaster. I am asserting my right. Creature's ears tremble.
Master Regulus speaks true, sir.
He croaks.
The house claims the Potter baby. Old magic says so. A curtain twitches in number 4. A muggle shadow crosses a window. Time is bleeding away. McGonagall looks between them, grief warring with duty. Albus. If those statutes stand, they do. Dumbledore knows they do. To challenge them here would mean dueling an heir of black on a muggle street, shattering the secrecy he has spent a lifetime defending. His wand lowers by a fraction. For now, he says, each word heavy, I will not contest your claim. But understand me, Regulus. If your path endangers this child, I will intervene. Regulus inclines his head, victory edged with something that is not relief. Then watch closely. This is that story. Hagrid hesitates, then, at Dumbledore's nod, surrenders the bundle. Harry shifts, tiny fingers catching in Regulus's sleeve as if choosing. The boy who lived leaves Privet Drive without ever touching its doorstep. Behind them, the neat little house sleeps on, unaware that the war has just been rewritten, and that Dumbledore is already planning how to take Harry back. A house of shadows and second chances. Grimmauld Place. Reborn. Grimmauld Place is waiting for them. Number 12 appears with a shudder of brick and shadow, wedged between its muggle neighbours like a secret that refuses to stay buried. The door is black, the serpent knocker cold, and the magic clinging to the threshold feels old and unfriendly. Regulus stands there with Harry in his arms, and for a heartbeat just stares at the house that made him, and nearly broke him.
Inside, it is worse. The air smells of dust and old spells. Portraits line the walls, eyes following, whispering, judging. A troll leg umbrella stand looms like a sentinel. Something skitters behind the wainscoting that is definitely not a mouse. And on the far wall, hidden behind moth-eaten curtains, the frame that once held Walburga Black waits, the echo of her screamed slurs still soaked into the plaster. This is not a home. This is a mausoleum built for a dead ideology. Creature appears with a crack, hunched and trembling, eyes flicking to the bundle in Regulus's arms and then away.
Master Regulus has returned,
he croaks, grief and fury tangled together.
The house is as mistress left it, noble, pure.
Regulus's answer is quiet, but it cuts through the grief like a knife. Not anymore. This is the first real choice he makes as Harry's guardian. Not the cave, not the locket. This. He shifts Harry higher, the baby fussing, and meets Creature's stare head on. Listen to me. This house will be safe for the child. You will remove every cursed object from the nursery and the upper floors. Lock them in the old black vault. Anything that can't be contained, you bring to me. At once. Creature recoils as if struck.
Master cannot mean.
I do. His voice hardens. We keep our heritage. The library stays. The tapestries stay. But the war toys go. No cursed knives where a child sleeps. No cursed music boxes that sing people mad. Do you understand? There is a long, dangerous silence. Then Creature bows so low his nose touches the floor.
For Master Regulus.
For the boy who lived in Mistress's place. Creature will obey. The house feels it. Magic shivers through the floorboards as Creature shuffles away, muttering, already cataloguing dangers. Wards twitch, tasting Harry's presence. That strange Potter lightning threaded with Lily's sacrifice. Old black protections, keyed to blood and name, hesitate. Then, grudgingly, they fold around the infant like a cloak. What if this is the moment the House of Black itself decides to survive by changing? That night, Grimmauld Place holds its first child in a generation. Regulus sits in a high-backed chair in the smallest bedroom. The only one Creature has deemed temporarily acceptable. The wallpaper peels. The window rattles in its frame. A single candle throws long, shaking shadows. Harry wriggles in his arms. Soft and impossibly small. Green eyes blinking up at a man who has killed for the wrong master. And nearly died to defy him. He has no idea how to do this. He can face Inferi. He can infiltrate Death Eater meetings. He can lie to Voldemort himself without his hand shaking. But when Harry lets out a thin, uncertain wail, Regulus freezes. Then he remembers. Hold, rock, warmth. He adjusts his grip, awkward, almost mechanical at first, until the rhythm settles. Forward, back, forward, back. The boy quiets, fist curling in Regulus's robes, as if choosing again. Creature hovers in the doorway, eyes wet. The house does not like the Potter, he mutters, voice barely above a whisper. But it will learn.
Master will teach it. Regulus glances around at the dark wood, the heavy curtains, the ghosts of screamed insults and whispered dark spells. This will never be the burrow, full of warmth and chaos and loud, easy love. It will be something sharper, colder, a place of training and watchfulness, of dueling dummies in the drawing room and war diagrams chalked on nursery floors, but it can still be a place where Harry is not alone. What if we get this right? Regulus murmurs, more to the house than to Creature. What if he grows up knowing exactly what monsters are out there, and that he never has to serve them? The candle gutters. The shadows lean in.
Downstairs, Creature begins tearing through cabinets, dragging out cursed music boxes and venomous heirlooms, hissing to himself about change and duty. Upstairs, Regulus keeps his vigil, eyes fixed on the sleeping child, who is now the center of his war. This is that story. Not of a warm home, but of a house of shadows, forced, inch by inch, to make room for second chances. And soon, Regulus will have to decide who else he dares to let into it. Regulus's secret war, Horcruxes, guilt, and a sleeping baby night again. Harry sleeps in a crib that should never have existed. Dark wood, carved serpents, the black family crest embroidered in silver on the blankets. His tiny fist is curled around nothing. Lashes resting on his cheeks, breath soft in the heavy silence of Grimmauld Place.
He has no idea the house is a battlefield. He has no idea he is the center of a war. Cut. Regulus sits alone at the dining table, a single candle guttering. The fake locket lies in front of him. Open, the note he wrote to a monster years ago, creased and stained. R.A.B. He stared at those letters until they blurred, until the memory of the cave rose up so vividly he could smell the salt and blood again. The boat scraping stone, the Inferi's hands dragging him under, creature screaming, the cold certainty that he was dead, that this was the price of one right choice in a life of wrong ones. Except he survived. He'd known before anyone else that Voldemort had torn his soul. Known the cave was a Horcrux nest, that the locket was only one piece of a much uglier spell.
That head start is his weapon now. His and Harry's. What if he can dismantle the Dark Lord's immortality before the boy ever sets foot in Hogwarts? He could tell Dumbledore. That thought circles him like a vulture. The famous headmaster, the order, the prophecy he's only heard in whispers. Wouldn't that be the safer choice? But then he remembers Dumbledore leaving Harry on a muggle doorstep in the real timeline, trusting blood magic and neglect. He remembers Dumbledore's calm distance while pureblood sons marched into masks and murder. Regulus has watched that man play chess with children. He will not let Harry be another piece. So he locks the locket away in a Black family warded box. He keeps his Horcrux knowledge a secret, a blade hidden in Slytherin sleeves. This is that story.
Not of blind trust, but of a former Death Eater who decides information is the only thing he will never surrender again. The guilt comes in waves. Faces he recruited to the mark. Boys who wanted glory. Girls who wanted safety. All of them dead. Or worse, the Dark Lord who never learned his name, who saw him as replaceable, disposable, a black heir to be used and discarded. Down the hall, Harry shifts in his crib, whimpers once, then settles. Regulus stands in the doorway, watching. This child was almost another sacrifice on someone else's altar, another pawn offered up to prophecy and pride. What if he breaks that cycle here? He steps closer, rests a hand on the embroidered crest as if swearing an oath to the house itself. By the time you're old enough to understand, he whispers, voice rough, the worst of his immortality will be gone. You will never serve him. You will never serve anyone. The candle in the dining room gutters out. In the dark, Regulus starts planning which piece of Voldemort's soul dies next. Pattern break. The childhood. Harry never had. The candle dies in the dining room. The house should sink back into silence. It doesn't. Cut. 5 years later. Harry's feet dangle above the floor as he sits at the long black dining table, legs too short to reach the rung of the chair. Silver glints. Crystal shivers when he bumps his elbow. Regulus's voice is low, precise, not unkind. Back straight. A hand hovers near Harry's spine, not quite touching. You are Harry Potter of the House of Black. You do not shrink, Harry tries. Shoulders back, chin lifted. He can feel Wahlburger's sealed portrait behind the wall. Dead and screaming in its frame, but the room itself is different now. Curtains open. Candles bright. A single toy broom propped in the corner, out of place among heirloom china. He fumbles the fork. Regulus catches it with a lazy flick of his wand. No spell word, just control. Again, that night. Pattern break. The same boy, the same house. A different world. We cut to the basement. The air smells of stone and old war magic. Chalk circles stain the floor where Regulus once practiced dark spells he will never teach. Now, he draws a smaller circle and sets Harry inside it. Shield charms only, Regulus says. You will not attack first. Not yet. Harry's hand shakes around his wand. It's a training wand, dulled and safe, but his heart still screams against his ribs. But what if I can't? You can. Regulus's gaze is steady, almost fierce. Protego. Mean it. A stinging hex snaps toward him. Harry flinches. The first shield is thin, wavering, but it holds. The spell spatters against it in a brief blue flare. For one breath, Harry just stares at the space where pain should have been. Regulus allows the smallest nod. Again! This is that story. The childhood Harry was never meant to have. Cut through the grief like a knife and rearranged into something sharp and deliberate. Morning. The back garden of Grimmauld, wild and overgrown.
An old black broom hovers uncertainly above the grass, bristles splayed, handles scarred from Quidditch matches played before the night everything changed. Regulus stands behind Harry, one hand on the broom, one hand on the boy's shoulder. "I was Seeker for Slytherin," he says quietly. "Catching what others miss is a choice, not a gift." Harry squints up at him. "What's a Seeker?" "You," Regulus answers, as if stating a prophecy. "Mount." The first lift is clumsy, short. Then Harry leans forward, and the broom listens. The wind hits his face, and something in his chest explodes into fierce, bright joy. For a moment, there is no prophecy, no war, no dead parents, just sky. Regulus watches, jaw tight, eyes wet in a way Harry pretends not to see. "Good," he calls. "Trust it."
Trust yourself. Afternoons become a strange curriculum. 1 hour balancing books on his head, learning which fork to use when the Minister of Magic is at dinner. The next hour in the library, Regulus unrolling old newspaper clippings of masked figures and burning buildings. "This," he says, tapping a photo of robed Death Eaters, "is what pure-blood arrogance becomes when you strip out conscience. Voldemort sells power. He sells belonging. He demands you stop asking questions." Harry's fingers curl on the table. "But we're purebloods. You said the Blacks are ancient and noble." Regulus does not flinch from the word. "We are, and we were wrong. Blood is not worth a single life. Not one." His voice roughens. "You will know the customs. You will know the rules."
"You will not worship them." Pattern interrupt. A quiet evening. Fire cracking low. Harry leans against Regulus's side on the sofa, half asleep. Soot on his cheek from a misfired spell. The word slips out unplanned. "Good night, Uncle." Regulus goes very still, as if someone has pointed a wand at his heart. "Again," he says, but the command has no edge. Harry blinks up at him. "Good night, Uncle." Something breaks. Something heals. Regulus lowers his hand to Harry's hair, fingers trembling. "Good night, Harry." From the doorway, Creature watches. His muttering is softer now, the old insults trailing off into gruff, wordless sounds. He leaves extra blankets folded at the foot of Harry's bed. He polishes the toy broom without being asked.
When he catches Harry sneaking biscuits, he only growls. Young master will spoil dinner, but his ears are pink. Grimmauld Place responds. Curtains washed. Dark artifacts locked away in iron-lined chests. A child's laughter echoing down halls that once knew only whispered plots and grief. The house is not redeemed. Not yet. But it is changing. And as Harry grows into this double life, pure blood manners above, shield charms below, one question begins to burn in him with every lesson. If this is what Voldemort truly is, what choice will Harry make when the war finally comes to his door? The boy who lived and knew it. Harry is 7 the night everything changed. Not because of a prophecy spoken or a spell cast, but because Regulus Black makes a choice. No more half-truths. No more waiting. They sit in the smallest drawing room of Grimmauld Place. Fire low, curtains shut, the house wrapped in that heavy, watchful silence that always seems to thicken when the past is about to be dragged into the light. "Harry," Regulus says, and the name sounds older in his mouth, weighed down by war and regret. "I'm going to tell you something unpleasant. You deserve to know, but you are not in danger tonight. Do you understand?" Harry stares at him, knees drawn up in the armchair, socks half fallen, a faint ink smudge on his thumb from practicing runes he technically shouldn't know yet. Is it about my scar? There it is. The question no one had forced him to ask.
In canon, that question would have been swallowed by a cupboard under the stairs, by locked letters and slammed doors. Here it has been circling for years, sharpened by overheard names, by the way Creature spits when he says, "Dark Lord." Regulus nods once. "It's about your scar, and your parents, and a man named Voldemort." He doesn't flinch when he says the name. He makes sure Harry sees that. He tells the story in clean, measured lines. A war that started before Harry was born. A dark wizard who believed some people were worth more than others. A prophecy that said a child would have the power to defeat him. James and Lily. Godric's Hollow. The killing curse that rebounded. The boy who lived. Not a legend, a sequence. Cause, effect, choice. Harry listens without moving. His fingers dig into the chair's fabric hard enough to hurt. When Regulus says, "Dead," something in the boy's chest seems to flinch. When he says, "You survived," Harry's gaze snaps to the fire, as if he can see green light reflected there. "Did he scream?" Harry asks, voice rough. "When he killed them, Regulus swallows. Some deaths are loud. Some are very fast. What matters is this. They died fighting. They chose that. And he fell because you lived. The words cut through the grief like a knife. But they also do something canon never allowed this early. They give Harry context. Not the Dursleys' venom. Not Dumbledore's careful omissions. A map. What if he comes back? Harry's 7-year-old mouth shapes the adult fear easily. He's heard it in whispered arguments outside his door. Will he try again? Yes. Regulus does not lie. Darkness doesn't stay buried, but we are not waiting helplessly. We train, we learn, we hunt the things he left behind. Horcrux is a word for later. Tonight, Harry only needs the shape of the war. So I'm supposed to stop him? Not a question. A conclusion. Harry's eyes are wet, but they are steady. Because of the prophecy. In part, Regulus says. Prophecies are possibilities, not chains. You are not a weapon for a headmaster's plan. You are my heir, a Black. Our family started this fight when I walked out of his service. We will finish it. This is that story. Not of a confused pawn dragged from a cupboard, but of a child who grows up with the enemy's name, with the battlefield sketched in before he ever holds a wand.
Grief comes first. Harry curls in on himself when Regulus leaves, presses his forehead to his knees, and lets the knowledge burn through him. His parents are not hazy shapes in a dream anymore. They are people who made a choice and died for it. The loss is real now, sharp. It hurts to breathe, then comes anger, at Voldemort, at the faceless cowards who followed him, at the idea that anyone would dare write Harry's life in advance. Regulus finds him in the training room the next morning, jaw clenched, trying to hold a basic shield charm far longer than any 7-year-old should. His arm trembles. He refuses to drop it. When he comes back, Harry says through his teeth, I don't want to be surprised. I want to be ready. Regulus doesn't tell him to be a child.
He adjusts Harry's stance, softens his grip, corrects his Latin. Then we prepare, he says quietly, on our terms, on Black terms, not Dumbledore's. From that night, Harry's sense of destiny is braided to the Black family's private war. Every etiquette lesson doubles as political strategy. Every broom drill hides seeker instincts meant for more than Quidditch. He is the boy who lived, and knew it, long before Hogwarts letters or sorting hats. And when Dumbledore finally extends his hand years later, expecting a bewildered child, he will meet something very different. A boy who has been planning for that moment his entire life. Dumbledore watches from the shadows. Dumbledore realizes it long before the Ministry does. There is a new gravity in the war, and it is orbiting number 12, Grimmauld Place. He never steps over the threshold, not once. Instead, he watches from the edges, from the shadows, from the thin places where wards hum against his fingertips and refuse to yield. Where Canon gave him a cupboard under the stairs, this Harry grows behind black stone and blood-soaked protections. What if the greatest chess player in the wizarding world finds the board already warded against him? Subtle spells first. A drifting phoenix feather of magic, brushed against the outermost black wards. They flare, ancient and proud, snapping at his probes. Dumbledore feels them bite and withdraws, eyes narrowing. He cannot see the boy, but he can see the shape of the fortress around him, so he uses people. Arabella happens to move 2 streets away from Grimald's muggle facade. Mundungus Fletcher overhears nocturne whispers about a reclusive black heir who pays in old gold and silence. Minerva McGonagall watches the Hogwarts rolls, sees the name Harry Potter paired with a guardian signature that makes her stare and then swear under her breath. Regulus Arcturus Black. Dumbledore sits alone in his office, the silence thick, forks shifting restlessly on his perch. He remembers another black boy, laughing in the Gryffindor common room, and the grief of that loss still can cut through the grief like a knife. But this is not Sirius. This is the brother who wore the mark. He asks for a meeting. Neutral ground.
A private room above the leaky cauldron, thick with privacy spells and the faint smell of old smoke. Regulus arrives first, back to the wall, wand loose in his hand. When Dumbledore steps through the door, Regulus does not bow. He simply stares. "You have Harry," Dumbledore says. No preamble, no twinkle. "I claimed him," Regulus answers. "By blood, by magic, and by choice. You left him on a muggle doorstep. We both know what that would have done to him." Dumbledore's jaw tightens. "There are protections you do not understand. Lily's sacrifice is not a leash you get to wrap around her son," Regulus snaps. The words land like a spell. "You want him innocent, unprepared. So you can point him at your prophecy when the time comes." "I want him to have a childhood," Dumbledore replies, voice low. "Not a childhood drilled into a weapon in a house that once served Voldemort." Regulus's mouth twists. That house also betrayed him. I know his secrets, his Horcruxes, his cave. I walked out of the night, everything changed for me, and I will not hand the boy who lived through your war to the man who lost it. "Join the Order," Dumbledore presses. "Let us protect him together." "No." Quiet. "Absolute. Your order failed my cousin, failed my brother, failed the Longbottoms. You fight in the open and send children into the fire, and then you call it fate. I will not let you do that to Harry." He leans forward. "Black magic, old wards, secrecy. Those will keep him alive. Not your noble intentions." The silence stretches. Fawkes is not here to sing. There is only the muffled sound of London beyond the glass and the distant scream of a bus braking hard. At last, Dumbledore inclines his head. "Very well. I will... Wait. Hogwarts is neutral ground. When he comes, I will speak to him myself." Regulus stands, "And I will make sure that when you do, he knows how to say no. Even to you." Two men walk away from that room with opposite plans for the same boy. This is that story. One will wait behind a headmaster's desk, the other will train a child in the shadows, so that when the time comes, Harry Potter can choose which war he is truly willing to fight.
Training the Heir. Slytherin lessons for a Gryffindor heart. Training begins in the dark, not with a wand raised, but with a quill, a schedule, and a man who refuses to make the same mistake twice. Regulus sits at the long black dining table, parchment spread before him, the silence thick enough to choke on. Columns, ages, skills, risks. He stares at the ink until it blurs, until memories of the cave and the green potion cut through the grief like a knife. Then he writes. Age 6. Balance, reflex, basic shield drills with pillows and cushion. Age 7. Wandless focus, breathing patterns. The first occlumency exercises framed as mind games and thought mazes. Age 8. Dueling stances with a blunted practice wand. Defensive theory slipped into bedtime stories about ancient curses and the fools who underestimated them, and threaded through every year. Pure blood etiquette. How to stand. How to greet a lord. Which titles matter. Which are dead husks clung to by men who fear irrelevance more than war. What if I don't want to bow to them? 8-year-old Harry demands one night. Chin lifted, green eyes hard. Regulus studies him for a long moment. Then you learn exactly how to bow, he says quietly, so you can choose when not to. Power is knowing the rules well enough to weaponize them. He never tries to smother Harry's Gryffindor heart. He sharpens it. When Harry charges into an argument to defend Creature from a visiting black cousin's sneer, Regulus does not scold him for the outburst. He waits until the door closes, until the echoes of "blood traitor" have faded. You were right to stand up, he says. Next time, stand up in a way that costs them something. So courage is praised, but refined. Loyalty is honored, but interrogated. Who deserves it? Who will betray it? Night after night, over tea and tactical chess, Regulus walks Harry through scenarios. Which ally folds under pressure? Which promise is a spell? And which is smoke? Harry learns to see fault lines in people the way he sees the snitch in a storm, instinctively, unerringly. The proof comes at 10, in a drawing room full of predators. It is an old pureblood gathering, velvet robes, cold smiles. The air smells of polish and old money. Harry moves through it in perfectly measured steps. the product of a curriculum no one expects a child to have survived. An elder Rosier corners him, voice smooth. You must be so grateful to your guardian. A black at your back. Imagine what you could do, properly guided, when the right side rises again. Once, Harry would have bristled, snapped, screamed. Now he smiles, small and bright, the way Regulus taught him. "Oh, I am grateful, sir," he says, letting the honorific land with just enough weight to flatter. He's the one who explained how some families mistake old names for real power. It would be dreadful to follow someone just because they were traditional. The room stills. A few heads turn. Rosier's eyes narrow, calculating. But Harry is already pivoting, offering a flawless bow to a neutral ministry official, drawing them into a harmless conversation about Quidditch. He has, in one breath, distanced himself from the old Death Eater block and signalled awareness of ministry politics, all while looking like an earnest child. Older purebloods stare. A boy just outmaneuvered a man who survived the First War. This Harry is not darker. He still hates cruelty. He still flinches at the thought of unforgivable curses. Still lies awake when Creature mutters about the cave.
But he understands that every room is a battlefield, every conversation a spell, every smile a choice. Canon Harry walked into Hogwarts knowing only how to survive. This Harry will walk in knowing how to survive, how to fight, and how to read the board before the first piece moves. And somewhere in a tower office, a headmaster is planning to test him. Regulus is already planning how Harry will say no. Creature's redemption arc starts early. Regulus doesn't just plan how Harry will say no to Dumbledore. He plans who will stand at the Harry's side when he does. Creature watches all of this with red-rimmed eyes and clenched bony hands. The old elf remembers the cave, the green potion, the way Regulus's screams echoed off dead stone.
In canon, that night everything changed, and Creature came home alone. In this story, Regulus came back with salt in his hair and blood on his robes, leaning on Creature's shoulder, whispering, "We are not done." That survival cuts through the grief like a knife. It rewires Creature's world. The master who chose the Dark Lord chose him instead, chose to live, chose war against his former master. From that moment, Creature's loyalty is not habit, it is vow. So when Regulus brings the baby into Grimmauld Place, Creature stares at Harry Potter with open resentment. Potter, blood traitors, the child of the man who laughed with Sirius and spat on the old ways. His lip curls, his fingers twitch toward a muttered slur. Regulus stops it with a single, soft word. Enough. His wand is down, but his eyes are deadly. You will not speak of James Potter in this house. You will not poison this child with Wahlburgers rot. Hear this, Creature. Harry is black by my choice. You will serve him as you serve me. Choice. The word lands heavier than any spell. Creature bows, shaking, resentment simmering under obedience. He makes Harry's bottles. He cleans the nursery. He mutters under his breath where no one can hear, or so he thinks. Harry hears the tension long before he understands the words. He hears the silence when he toddles into the kitchen and Creature vanishes rather than look at him. He feels the stiffness when small fingers brush against rough, scarred knuckles. The shift begins with something tiny. One winter night, Harry wakes screaming from a nightmare of green light. Regulus is away. The wards thrum. Creature appears first, drawn by the sound. He means to call for his master. Instead, he finds himself awkwardly patting Harry's back, muttering, there, little master," as the boy buries his face in the worn tea towel. The next day, Harry leaves a slightly squashed chocolate frog on the low shelf Creature uses. No announcement, no fanfare, just a child's offering. Creature stares at it for a long time before eating it in 3 slow bites. From there, Regulus is ruthless and deliberate. If Harry will live in a war, Harry will know the weapons no one teaches at Hogwarts. Old black household magic. the things Dumbledore would never approve.
Kreacher becomes Harry's secret tutor. At 7, Harry stands in the drawing room while Kreacher shows him how to feel the wards, how to sense intrusion as a pressure behind the eyes. At 8, he learns the snap of house elf travel, how it feels to side along with Kreacher through the cracks between places, a cold rush, and then stillness. At 9, the elf whispers obscure curses and their counter-curses into Harry's ear, magic so old it tastes of iron. "What if you are taken?" Kreacher asks one night, voice low. "What if the Dark Lord returns? Kreacher will come, but Little Master must know how to break chains." Every lesson is wrapped around that night in the cave. Regulus's hand on Kreacher's head. Regulus's voice, hoarse from poison, saying, "Live."
Help me end him. The mission to destroy Horcruxes is no longer Regulus's secret burden. It is Kreacher's sacred task, and by extension, Harry's inheritance. The final crack in Kreacher's resentment comes the summer Harry turns 10. A visiting pure-blood cousin, all cold rings and colder eyes, walks through Grimald's hall and sneers at the elf. "Filthy creature! You should have had him put down with the rest of the rubbish, Regulus." Harry is in the doorway before his guardian can answer. "Don't talk about Kreacher like that." His voice shakes, but he doesn't step back. "He saved my dad's life. He helps protect this house. If you insult him, you insult our family." Our family. Regulus hears it. Kreacher feels it. For a heartbeat, the house holds its breath. Kreacher's eyes fill. Something old and twisted in his chest loosens. The resentment dies there, quiet and complete. From that moment, his loyalty to Harry is not duty, it is devotion. And as the wards shiver with distant movement, and Regulus reads new reports of strange disappearances, he realizes this bond will be tested sooner than any of them are ready for. Pattern break. A different kind of birthday letter. The house knows before Harry does. The wards twitch. The air tightens, and every portrait on the landing seems to stare at the front door of Grimmauld Place as the post owl batters its wings against the glass. No privet drive, no cupboard, no Dursley screamed outrage. Just ancestral stone, old magic, and a boy who has been waiting for this moment his entire life.
Harry is already in the hall when Kreacher opens the window. He doesn't bolt from a bedroom. He doesn't snatch the letter in secret. He stands there, steady, palms a little damp, eyes fixed on the heavy parchment as it drops into Regulus Black's hand. Regulus doesn't look surprised. Of course he doesn't. The school lists have been prepared for weeks. Quills sharpened, vault reports reviewed, contingencies drafted in neat, controlled script. He breaks the seal with a precise movement. Reads. Hands the letter to Harry without ceremony. "Welcome to the war," he says softly, "and to Hogwarts." This is that story. Harry's heart hammers as he stares at his name in emerald ink. Mr. H. Potter, second floor bedroom, number 12, Grimmauld Place, London. No mistake. No attempt to drag him back to a dead muggle life. His choice was made the night everything changed and Regulus carried him through the black wards, but this feels different. Official. Inevitable. "Do you think it already knows?" Harry asks. "The hat. About all of this." His training. The dueling drills that left his arms shaking. The whispered discussions of Horcruxes and sacrifice. The way Regulus's grief has cut through the grief like a knife, sharpening instead of softening him. Regulus's gaze flickers to the serpents carved into the banister, Slytherin green, cold and gleaming. "The hat sees what you are," he says, "not just what you want to be. It will see your spells, your discipline, your anger, your mercy." A beat. "It will see me." Harry tries to make the tension crack. Books stacked in precise towers. Practice wand holsters. A set of robes already tailored. Regulus had used to wait for the official. Pattern break. No frantic scramble to a spider-infested cupboard. No desperate search for schoolbooks in a Dudley ransacked room. Just methodical packing under the watch of black family magic. Regulus in the doorway and watches him. Watches Harry tuck away a worn practice snitch, a stack of ward diagrams, a photo of the two of them in the black garden. Regulus too stiff, Harry wand in hand. This was the plan. Raise a weapon. Shape a counter-curse to Voldemort long before Dumbledore ever moves. Train the boy, control the variables, win the war. But as the trunk, something else presses in.
The realization that Hogwarts will see raw edges. That the hat will see what Regulus has done and what he hasn't. That professors, ghosts, and children from every house will all reach for pieces of the boy holding together. He is about to lose daily control of Harry Potter, not the symbol, the sun. Regulus's hand tightens on the doorframe and tells Blanche. For the first time since the cave, he wonders, when that whispers its choice, who will Harry decide to be within the room? Platform 9 3/4. Old Enemy Alliances. The platform is a battlefield before the war even reaches Hogwarts. King's Cross hums with muggles and steam and shouted announcements. But for Regulus Black, the real path is between 9 and 10. Solid hidden spell, old magic. He guides Harry straight toward it, one hand on the trolley, the other resting, casual, on his wand. They pass the barrier in a rush, cold and sound. Then colour. Owls screeched, trunks banged, the scarlet steam engine boomed, and stairs. Former Order members stood near one pillar, X under another. Both groups see him at just the same moment. Wands don't rise, but shoulders tense. Conversations into silence. Regulus feels it cut through grief like a knife. The memory of the night everything changed behind his ribs. He keeps walking.
Harry feels it too. 11 years old, but trained to read a room the other children read storybooks. He watches the way Mad-Eye Moody's magical eye spins and fixes on Regulus, the way Kingslot's jaw tightens. On the other side, Lucius Malfoy's pale head turns, and a knot of Slytherins simply stared. What if every step toward the train is also a step into open judgment? What if this is the moment the boy raised in a black household learns what really costs? Head up, Regulus murmurs, enough that only Harry hears. You are not, and you are not ashamed. Then Draco Malfoy appears. Pointed chin, pale hair, eyes bright with curiosity, and something sharper.
He's flanked Lucius and Narcissa. Perfect, pure blood against the steam. Regulus, Lucius says, smooth as ever. We'd heard rumours. A beat, a tiny smile. It seems some ghosts stay in their graves. Regulus's smile is thin. Some of us chose not to tell us either. His flicks to Draco. You must be Draco. Seeker material after your father. Compliment and wrapped together. Draco's eyes to Harry's scar. Then to the black on his hand. So it's, he breathes, boy who lived. House Black. Harry feels the weight of that title, coiled in it. Harry, he corrects quietly. Harry is fine. Before Lucius can probe further, a warm, harried voice cuts in. Ron, Ginny, keep your trunks. Oh. Molly Weasley stops short, eyes landing on Regulus's face. Her expression hardens, mother bear instinct clashing with memories of the Eater mask. Mrs. Weasley, Regulus says, inclining his head with pure blood courtesy, his weapon to something sharper. Your brother died, I remember. I won't insult you by pretending I'm wrong side of it. Molly's fingers tighten on her daughter's shoulder. You're raising him? Her gaze flicks to Harry, full of suspicion and some grudgingly protective. Teaching exactly. The truth, Regulus answers. About Voldemort, about Dumbledore, about choice. Ron, hovering behind her, stares at Harry in curiosity. In Grimmauld Place.
Enough? Dark? Harry thinks of warded drawing rooms, cursed heirlooms locked away, creature muttering about blood while serving them tea. It was. We're changing it. He glances at Ron's second-hand trunk, the patched robes, the way Molly folds in the same breath. Maybe you can tell me what a wizarding family looks like. The whistle blows. Steam screams around them. Regulus crouches to Harry's height, shutting out the watching eyes, the old elites, the new tensions. It's just them. Listen to me, he says, voice low and fierce. Trust Kelly. Watch Dumbledore. He plays a long game and are a tempting piece. His hand tightens briefly on Harry's shoulder. And remember this, not all Slytherins serve Voldemort. To end him. Swallows, nods once. The choice, waiting. Train. Under the hat. In every friendship he's about to make. Story. Hat's dilemma. Where does this Harry belong? The Great Hall is a storm of whispers. Candles float, shadows flicker, and every eye tracks the boy with the lightning scar as he walks toward the stool. Harry's palms are dry, not sweating. Regulus drilled that out of him. Never let them see you shake. But his heart is pounding hard enough that he wonders if the hall can hear it. The hat waits, frayed, old, dead cloth that has decided more wars than most ministers. He sits, wood cold under his hands.
The brim drops over his eyes. The world away. Silence. Well, a voice murmurs in his ear, dry and amused. This is interesting. Harry doesn't flinch. He's been expecting this. Regulus had told him stories of this hat, choices and mistakes, of the night everything changed for two black brothers, different paths. Sirius had laughed, had not. I see bravery, the hat muses. Enough to walk into a cave if you had to. Loyalty, fierce and stubborn, for your people. Image flash in Harry's mind. Regulus, pale and shaking, telling Hake and the lit. Creature, voice cracking as he described the green potion that cut through the grief like a knife.
Harry standing in Grimmauld Place, promising he would Regulus started. But also, the hat's tones. Cunning. You plan 3 moves. You read faces. You know the power of a name, of a house, of a well-timed spell and a better-timed silence. Harry's jaw tightens. He thinks of pure blood manners drilled to him until they were reflex. Of learning which fork to use at a Wizengamot dinner and which cursed at a masked Death Eater. Of Regulus's hand on his shoulder. Their rules against them. I know what you are for, the hat says softly. Slytherin ticks. Political awareness. You do not trust Dumbledore. You intend to use this school as a battle whether you admit it or not. Harry's thoughts spike.
Not Slytherin, or the start too soon. But then, what if that's exactly why he should go? What if being in the snake pit lets him watch the next generation of death they hatch? Could put you in Gryffindor, the hat continued. You'd do well there. Who'd follow you into fire. A different story. Regulus's voices in his memory. Not all Slytherins serve Voldemort, trying to end him. Makes his choice. I need Slytherin. Clear and hard. To chit, to watch them win this war. The hat goes very still. It whispers. Dangerous, but perhaps necessary. Very well, Mr. Potter. What you do with this, screams the word. Slytherin! Hall doesn't cheer. It gasps. Gryffindor's table stares, half risen, as if the spell of the has shattered. A few Slytherins clap, sharp and uncertain, eyes wide at the boy who lived, walking tin and silver. Harry feels the weight of every gaze, every future alive, every grudge. At the staff table, Dumbledore's smile doesn't reach his eyes. The twinkle is gone, replaced by something calculating, almost cold, as if a piece on him moved itself. Beside him, Snape's expression is worse. Shock, recognition, a flicker of old grief, then dusk slamming down. Because Regulus Black's son, by blood or by choice, has just come home to the dungeons, and Snape understands exactly what that is. He is not the only one.
In the shadows beneath the enchanted ceiling, something old stirs, watching this new element of house and prophecy. If the boy who lived wears Slytherin green, whose side will the snakes be on when the war finally comes? That story. Pattern break. A Slytherin Harry rewritten trio. The dungeons are not ready for him. Harry Potter in Slytherin green is a spell no one expected, and the first shockwaves at the table itself. Draco Malfoy stares at him across the silver plates, pale and vicious and fascinated. The boy who lived, Regulus Black's ward. A name his father curses, else his father worships. Draco makes a choice while the pumpkin juice is poured. He leans in, voice low.
My father says your guardian is the Dark Lord. His eyes flick to the black on Harry's hand. But you're a black. Look after our own. Wary alliance. Not instant friendship, not open war. Harry feels Regulus's lesson coil in his spine. Never give away your whole hand, especially Malfoy. Then we'll see, he says softly, whether your foe speaks for you. The silence between is thin, sharp, dangerous. It will hold for now. The real anchor comes further down the bench. A quiet boy with ink-stained fingers and a prefect never notices him. Theodore Nott watches everything and almost nothing. He has a father with a dark mark and a mind that has already started asking what if the Dark Lord was wrong. Theo lends Harry a quill, breaks in potions. He murmurs pattern break because Harry's first real secret in Slytherin isn't Draco or Theo. It's the Muggle-born girl who should have been eaten alive in this house and refuses to be. A sharp-tongued second year named Gemma Farley, who knows more about blood law than half the purebloods and hides her parents' jobs behind perfect posture. She corners Harry after a prefect's meeting, eyes blazing. If you're Regulus Black's project, prove it. Use that name to shut them up when they whisper mudblood. She is the one who teaches him which old families hate Voldemort quietly, which ones are waiting for a signal. Their friendship lives in alcoves and empty classrooms, in whispered strategy and shared disgust. Outside Slytherin, the pattern shatters again. Ron Weasley doesn't meet Harry on a train. He meets him on a broom. Gryffindor versus Slytherin. First match of the season. Red hair a streak against the sky. Ron is a rookie keeper who refuses to be intimidated by a black-trained seeker. They clash in the air, trade shouted insults and bone-deep grins when a near crash leaves the crowd screaming. After the match, Slytherin by 10 points. Ron stalks over, flushed and stubborn. You fly dirty, he snaps. Harry shrugs. You defend well. Rival first, ally later. When a corridor duel with older Slytherins ends with Ron at his back, wand up, refusing to run, Hermione enters from a different angle entirely. Ravenclaw, quill already poised, correcting a misattributed rune in ancient runes before Harry can finish his argument. Or Gryffindor, hand in the air in defense, challenging his coldly efficient countercurse with questions about intent and collateral damage. They don't click over trolls and chessboards. They clash over ethics, over when a spell crosses the line from necessary to cruel. Her debates cut through the grief like a knife, forcing Harry to separate Regulus's regrets from his own instincts. And through it all, the tension of his name coils through Slytherin. Some students admire him, the heir of Black, the seeker, the boy who can make Snape pause. Others whisper that he's a traitor's project, a living rebuke to their parents' choices. Snape watches from the shadows, every answer Harry gives in class chiseling away at old assumptions about Potters and Blacks and war. This is not the Golden Trio. This is a politically mixed cell forming in real time. A Malfoy who might defect, a Nott who lives in grey, a Muggle-born strategist, a Weasley rival turned shield, a debate partner who refuses to let Harry become dead-eyed and ruthless. This is that story. And when the first real test comes, this fractured, sharpened group will decide exactly how Slytherin Harry Potter fights. First-year tests, trolls, Quidditch, and quiet calculations. The test doesn't come in a duel. It comes in a bathroom that smells of cracked tiles and panic. Halloween, the night everything changed for first years in another story. Here, Harry is already moving before the scream finishes echoing down the corridor. He's drilled for this. Regulus made him practice until wand out, shield up, assess was muscle memory. Potter, what? Draco starts. but Harry's already snapping orders, voice low and sharp. Crabbe, Goyle, get the younger kids back to the common room. Draco, with me. Not. Find a prefect. Go! It isn't Gryffindors charging in, half-blind. It's a Slytherin search party, slipping through the shadows toward the girls' bathroom, where Hermione and a Gryffindor boy were last seen. The troll's stench hits first. Then the sound. Stone cracking. Something heavy swinging. Hermione's breath coming in ragged bursts. Harry doesn't hesitate. Ego Maxima! The shield blooms, catching a falling chunk of ceiling before it can crush the girl crouched beneath a sink. Draco's spell follows, a blinding flare at the troll's eyes. A red-haired figure, Weasley, of course, throws himself at Hermione, dragging her clear. For one suspended heartbeat, Slytherin Green and Gryffindor Red stand together in the dust and silence. On my mark, Harry says. Now! 3 spells hit in sequence, bludgeoning, tripping, binding. The exact combination Regulus drilled into him for large, stupid opponents. The troll crashes down. Dead or stunned, it doesn't matter. It's not getting up. McGonagall arrives to chaos contained, instead of disaster unfolding. She stares at Harry, at Draco, at Ron's white-knuckled grip on Hermione's arm. The house lines are blurred in a way Hogwarts hasn't seen in years. What if this is the night the war inside the castle quietly shifts? Weeks later, the stands roar cold November air around the pitch. Harry sits astride a Slytherin broom, green robes whipping, heart hammering. Regulus's voice is in his head, crisp and relentless. You don't chase the snitch. You hunt the other seeker. Control the angles. Control the war. Across the field, McGonagall watches, jaw tight. This was supposed to be her Gryffindor prodigy. Instead, she's watching a black heir fly with obscene control, using Regulus's old Slytherin patterns to box in the opposing seeker. He feints left, draws the other boy into a dive, then cuts across the line of sight. There, the glint of gold near a chaser's elbow. Harry dives, the world narrowing to wind, wood, and the promise of impact. His fingers close around the snitch, a breath before collision. The crowd screams. Slytherin surges to its feet. McGonagall doesn't cheer. But there's something in her eyes that looks very much like conflicted pride, and it cuts through the grief like a knife. Underneath the noise, Harry is counting. Patterns, glances, staff movements. Because the troll wasn't an accident, not to someone raised on Regulus's whispered stories of Horcruxes and contingency plans. A 3-headed dog behind a forbidden door. A Gringotts break-in the same day Harry visited. Snape's eyes on him during Quidditch, not with hatred, but with calculation. Quirrell's stutter that never quite fits. Regulus taught him that Voldemort never truly died, that men who chase immortality don't stop with one spell. So when Harry pieces together Flamel's name from a chocolate frog card and a stray mention in a book Hermione is devouring, the conclusion is brutal and simple. The Philosopher's Stone is here, and someone is moving toward it. Ron wants to tell McGonagall. Hermione suggests Dumbledore. Draco, pale and precise, says, "We don't know who's compromised." Harry hears Regulus's voice again. Information is leverage. Don't hand it to a general you don't trust. So he makes a choice. He tells Dumbledore enough to look obedient, half-truths, carefully arranged. Not about the dog, not about the stone, not about the way Quirrell's eyes go dead when he thinks no one is watching. The rest he keeps inside the circle forming around him. Gryffindor and Slytherin both. A student-led investigation, born in the wake of a troll and a Quidditch victory, turning silently toward the forbidden third-floor corridor. This is that story, and the next move they make will decide whether they're just children playing at war, or the first real threat Voldemort's shadow has faced in a decade. Regulus's long game, Horcrux hunting in the background. While Harry and his friends stare up at the forbidden corridor, measuring themselves against a war they don't yet understand, Regulus Black is already in one. Not at Hogwarts, in the dark. He moves through the sealed Black family library with a candle in one hand and a dragon-hide glove on the other, tracing spines stamped with curses and bloodlines. The air tastes of dust and old spells. This is where his long game begins, not with prophecy, with records. What if the heir of the ancient and noble House of Black decided that if Dumbledore would not end Voldemort properly, he would? Regulus drags a ledger to the table, ink-stained fingers skimming columns of acquisitions. Goblin-made cup, purchased quietly by a gaunt cousin. An ugly ring that killed 2 appraisers. A diadem mentioned only in a half-burned letter from a great-aunt who once corresponded with that brilliant Miss Ravenclaw girl. The cave taught him the pattern. The night everything changed, when the Inferi screamed beneath the water and the fake locket burned against his chest, he understood Voldemort's vanity. Objects that mattered, places that hurt. Magic that would outlive the man. If there was a locket in a nightmare sea, then there would be other pieces, tied to founders, to murders, to his own obsessions. Creature becomes his unseen network. The elf apparates where Regulus cannot safely go, slipping through wards with the stubbornness of a creature who has outlived 3 generations of Blacks. He fetches whispers from Nocturne Alley, listens at the edges of old Death Eater haunts, returns with names and rumours and the smell of smoke in his ragged tea towel.
Master Regulus, they spoke of a cup.
Creature rasps one winter evening while Harry sleeps 2 floors up.
The Lestrange vault. The Dark Lord was proud.
Regulus's stomach turns. Pride, of course. He marks it in his notebook, a quiet choice that will one day cut through the grief like a knife. Not every lead is distant. Some are close enough to touch. Months later, under a rain-slick sky, Regulus stands outside a derelict manor in the Midlands, wand in his sleeve. Inside, an old Death Eater cell has holed up, clinging to dead orders and dead dreams. They have something of Voldemort's, a cursed locket, passed hand to hand as proof their master will return. He doesn't storm the door. He waits, watches, counts guards, patterns, silences between patrols. This is not a Gryffindor charge. It is a Slytherin extraction. When Creature slips inside to track the object, everything goes wrong at once. A shout, a spell, a flare of green through a broken window. Regulus is already moving, disillusionment charm shimmering over his skin as he presses flat against the wall. Boots thud past, so close he can see the mud on their soles. A man snarls, "Someone's here," and another answers, "You're hearing ghosts." For 3 heartbeats, the war hangs on whether they turn their heads. They don't. Creature reappears at Regulus's feet with a pop, clutching a decoy chain and shaking with fury. The real locket is there, but not yet reachable without blowing his cover. Regulus retreats into the rain, jaw clenched, the taste of failure and fear bitter on his tongue. He will be back. The story of this war is patience as much as courage, but he is not always too late. By the time Harry finishes his first year, standing in a hospital wing, thinking he has faced the heart of Voldemort, there is a quiet victory no one at Hogwarts knows. In the warded cellar beneath Grimmauld Place, Regulus stares at a cracked, ugly ring, resting in a circle of containment runes. It took Black records to find it, Creature's stubbornness to retrieve it, goblin lore and blood magic to unmake it. The stone is dead now. The Horcrux inside already screamed itself into nothing. One more piece of Voldemort is gone. And the future war Harry thinks he understands has already changed. The mirror of Erised shows a different family. The room is cold and abandoned, all stone and shadows and forgotten things. Harry slips through the doorway, the way he's learned to move through Hogwarts now. Quiet, alert, wand within reach. The spell of the place is different, heavy. He stares at the tall, dust-veiled mirror standing against the wall, its frame clawed with strange gold letters. Erised, Stra Eru, Oit Ube, Kafru Oit on Warsi. He knows enough arithmancy to feel the puzzle in it, enough war stories told in low voices at Grimmauld Place to be wary. But he also knows grief, knows the ache that never really left his chest, even growing up in a house where someone tucked him in, where someone actually stayed. What if it's nothing? He whispers to the silence and steps in front of the glass. At first, it's only his reflection. Skinny, messy-haired, black family ring too big for his hand. Then the surface ripples, soft as water under a spell. James Potter appears behind him. Harry stops breathing. His father's hand lands on his shoulder in the glass. Lily slides in on the other side, hair a living flame, her smile so fierce it almost hurts. This would be enough to cut through the grief like a knife. But the mirror isn't finished. Regulus steps into view next to them. Not the haunted man Harry sees late at night over reports and maps, but younger, unscarred, eyes clear. James claps him on the back. Lily laughs at something he says. All three adults look down at Harry with the same expression. Proud, unbroken, together. Harry's throat burns, because this is the thing he's never said out loud. Not to Hermione, not to Neville, not even to Regulus himself. He doesn't just want his parents back. He wants them to forgive the man who raised him. He wants a world where James and Lily don't have to be dead for Regulus to be good. What if there didn't have to be a choice between them? He reaches for the glass. His fingers meet only cold. Later, Dumbledore's voice is quiet but insistent when he stops Regulus outside the Great Hall. There is an object I would like you to see, for your clarity. Regulus almost refuses. He has no patience for the headmaster's games. But he follows, down corridors he remembers from his own Slytherin years, into the same forgotten room. The mirror stands waiting. He faces it with the calm of a man who has already watched himself die once in a cave full of inferi. The surface shivers. He does not see Orion and Walburga. He does not see the old pureblood court kneeling. He sees Harry, older, alive, laughing in sunlight that looks suspiciously like the Black family orchard. A dark mark burns away on parchment in the background, a symbol dissolving into ash. The Hogwarts crest gleams over a rebuilt Great Hall, where Slytherin and Gryffindor banners hang at equal height. The Black family tapestry reweaves itself, scorched holes filling in with new names. At the center, Harry stands between two figures, James Potter, arm slung around his shoulders, and Regulus Black, head high, House of Black, ring bright and clean. The Black name redeemed, Voldemort gone. Harry safe. For one heartbeat, Regulus leans toward it. This is that story, the one he's been bleeding toward in the dark. But then he steps back. No, he says, almost to himself, not in a mirror. He turns away. Each footstep is a choice, echoing in the silence. Action over fantasy, war over dreams. A lesson Harry watches, hidden in the doorway, unable to unsee. Because the mirror isn't done with them. Not yet. Pattern break. A first-year finale. Without a sacrificial child. The night everything changed for first-year Harry doesn't begin in a chamber of fire. It begins in a corridor of stone, with a chessboard still echoing in his bones, and a question burning in his mind. What if Quirrell isn't just nervous? What if the stutter is a mask? He runs, trainers slapping against flagstones. Not toward the trapdoor this time, but toward an empty classroom 2 floors up. The door slams. Silence drops. He yanks his wand, presses it to the black signet ring on his finger, and whispers the spell Regulus drilled into him until his throat went raw. Familiar Nexus, Priority Black, Code Cave. The metal sears hot. Magic flares old and possessive, racing through hidden channels that do not care about Dumbledore's wards. In Grimmauld Place, miles away, a matching ring burns against Regulus's skin. He is in the war room. Maps, names, red strings of spell light tracing Death Eater routes. Creature at his elbow. The pain in his hand cuts through the grief like a knife. Master Regulus, Creature croaks, already reaching for the travelling cloak. The boy? The cave code, Regulus breathes. He stares at the ring, at the single word pulsing across it in faint, frantic script. Stone. Choice slams into him. The last time he answered that code, he walked into poison and in fury and never expected to walk out. This is that story again, folding back on itself. Only this time, the child in danger is his.
Creature, Hogwarts, Route 7, now!
They don't use the front gates. They don't ask permission. Old Death Eater access routes thread the bones of the castle, forgotten by the Order, remembered by the man who once wore the mark and then turned against it. A hidden grate in Hogsmeade, a tunnel that predates the founders, a ward key stolen from a dead man's wrist. Regulus moves fast, cloak snapping, spells on his tongue. Creature pops ahead in sharp bursts, testing wards, muttering about blood traitor headmasters and filthy dark lords in the same breath. In Hogwarts, Harry doesn't wait idly. He paces the classroom, replaying every glance, every whisper. Quirrell at the troll, Quirrell in the forest. Quirrell's eyes when they spoke of Voldemort, going dead for a heartbeat too long. The stone under the school, bait in a trap Dumbledore set and never explained. He could go alone. Canon says he should, but he has been raised on different stories. Stories where children are not sacrifices. They are commanders in training. He grips his wand. Come on, he whispers to the ring. Please. The air shivers. A crack of magic, sharp as a scream. Regulus steps out of shadow, Creature at his heel. You did well, Regulus says, eyes already scanning, calculating. Show me. They move together through the castle. A small unit slipping between patrols, past the sleeping portraits, past the third-floor corridor warning that was never meant to deter a determined child. Regulus doesn't disable the protections. He dissects them. Devil's snare with precise fire. Keys caught with a seeker's reflexes and a Slytherin's ruthlessness. A chessboard crossed not by sacrifice, but by coordinated strikes. Harry's been drilling for months. Pattern interrupt. They are not alone. When they step into the final chamber, Quirrell is already there, hand outstretched, stone glimmering in his palm. But so is Dumbledore. Blue robes stark against black rock, wand raised. 3 fronts, 1 room. No more illusions about who is using whom. Voldemort's voice hisses from the back of Quirrell's skull, low and hungry. The boy. Bring me the boy. Regulus shifts, placing himself between Harry and that voice without even thinking. Dumbledore's gaze flicks to the movement, calculation, and something like regret warring in his eyes. The headmaster says, soft, too soft for a battlefield. Shouldn't be here. Here's what isn't said. Supposed to come alone. Supposed to play your part. Move behind Dumbledore. He's at Regulus's side. Explode. A curse from Regulus that only a former Death Eater would know. From Dumbledore, bright and blinding. Screams as Voldemort forces more power through a body already cracking. Doesn't survive it. Seizes a heartbeat of advantage and calls white fire that consumes the red glint in Quirrell's hand. Over trinkets. Pretend. Over power. Voldemort rips free as smoke disembodied again, shrieking through stone and spellwork before vanishing into the night. Dust settles. Harry is still standing. Not because of a mother's blood alone, not because a headmaster arranged the board, but because a man who once served the Dark Lord refused to let a child walk into death for him. In silence, Dumbledore stares at Regulus and understands the pattern has broken. The sun is gone. Voldemort is still out there, but the boy is no longer his pawn. From this night on, every move he makes has to account for that. Same school, very different. Harry is open and full of whispers. Same school, very different. Harry. The summer after the stone is not a holiday. It is a war room. Grimmauld Place hums with spellfire and whispered strategy. Regulus walks Harry through occlumency again and again until Harry's mind is a fortress. Until the memory of the night everything changed at the mirror can't be pulled to the surface without his consent. Lips. Regulus doesn't shout. He just says, quietly, "Will use what you love against you." What he sees. The wards on Grimmauld Place in blood and ancient ink. Stands barefoot on cold stone, chanting black family rites that make Harry's scar prickle. Possession lattices. Anti-summoning anchors, contingencies for a body returned and a soul still torn. Creature moves through it all, eyes wide, carrying cursed artifacts to be dismantled, muttering about Master Regulus and young Master Harry ending this war properly. But Harry can feel wards the way other boys feel weather. The sting of an unfamiliar signature. He knows that protection is a choice and a craft, not a miracle that falls from a mother's dead hands. Looms out of the mist, but Harry steps off the train different. Tall, yes, but it's the way he watches, how he tracks professors' wands, how he knows which Slytherins flinch at the word mudblood, and which savour it. He has blood manners down to an art now. The Black Heir's cool nod and measured courtesy, and he uses them like a weapon. When Draco sneers at a nervous Hufflepuff first year, Harry's voice cuts through the noise like a spell. Harry does not tolerate cowardice disguised as tradition, Malfoy. Stills. Draco stares. The power shifts a fraction. He is detective too. He remembers a girl who cried in a bathroom last year and nearly died because no one was watching her. So Filch's cat is found stiff and hanging. When the blood on the wall screams about the Chamber of Secrets being opened, Harry doesn't just see a horror story. He sees a pattern. Horcrux, anchor. Ancient magic bound to a bloodline and a place. Taught him the logic of Voldemort's soul. If you can hide a fragment in a locket and guard it with a lake of the dead, what if read one through a school itself? Monster only Slytherin's heir can command. Before the message on the stone wall, the corridor choked with students and fear. Already cataloguing possibilities beside him, eyes sharp. About monsters. Harry silent. Chamber. Slim monster. Supposed heir. Slytherin. Stands with the weight of a vow. If this is tied to Salazar, then it is tied to the house that claimed him. To that Regulus made him wear properly. To the legacy he refuses to let Voldemort define. Gaze brushes over him in the chaos, measuring, calculating. Once, Harry would have reached for that safety. Now remembers the stone, the secret, the way Regulus stood between them and said no. This, Harry decides, the headmaster will not steer him. If it's a Horcruxes game, he will break it. If it wins, he will reclaim it. On terms, with his own choices, before anyone else ends up dead. That story. Prejudice and power. Open and full of whispers. Not soon yet. Not blisk yet. A chamber ringed with students and torchlight. The club. Preens on the platform. Snape stares down the rows with that dead, assessing calm. One beam, robes swish. And in it all, Harry stands in Slytherin green. That story. It begins the way you remember. Lockhart tearing them off, spells misfiring, chaos simmering under forced cheer. Humming beneath Harry's skin. A voice months ago, in Grimald's shadowed drawing room. Punishment is rare, not evil, Regulus had said, pacing before the Black family tapestry. Taught people to flinch at snakes. Let them flinch. You not. Practice, not with a live snake at first, but with old recordings, with descriptions, with that strange, sliding language rolling across Harry's tongue until it felt natural instead of cursed. On posture, on eye contact, on when to shut up and when to let the fear work for him. Tool, Regulus murmured, voice low, grief buried under control. The Dark Lord turned Parseltongue into a threat. You turn it into a shield. Or a... Your... Everything tilts when the snake appears. Malfoy's spell hits. The serpent lands with a heavy slap, coils, raises its head. Harry is a Gryffindor anomaly. Here, Slytherin House inhales as one. The start before Harry opens his mouth. Handle it, he's Black's heir. Dark that, properly ours. Or next Dark Lord. Watch. Gaze toward a terrified Hufflepuff. Lockhart humbles. Snape does nothing yet. Measuring. Harry think. He moves. Isn't English. The world's out in hisses, a smooth, sliding spell of sound. The s's head tilting toward him. The hall erupts. He feels the silence that isn't silence at all, but sharp-edged listening. The way Slytherins lean forward, not away. Some are hungry, some wary, some calculating loyalty in real time. Harry tells Snake, voice low. It coils in on itself, docile now, waiting for his next command. Babbles something useless. Snape pushes the serpent with a flick, gaze locked on Harry's face. Across him, Ron stares, pale. Hermione's eyes are wide, but not with simple fear. She's cataloguing reactions, counting enemies. In the common room, the whispers are no longer whispers. Spoke to it like it was his familiar. Black said power should stay in our house. Matters what Slytherin meant all along. Some dark wizard, and doesn't lower their voice. Harry Regulus in his head and turns, slow. Pound dark or light, he says, each word deliberate. It's a talent, a language. You decide what you do with it. Voldemort used Parseltongue to murder. I to stop an attack. If you call the difference, that's your prejudice, not my magic. Voldemort cuts through the grief like a knife. A few inch, a few stare. One or very quietly nod. Alone with Hermione and Ron in a hidden alcove, the choice lands. The secrets, Hermione whispers. If it's real, it's sealed in Parseltongue. You're the only one who can open it. Me look worse, Harry answers. Slytherin, Snakespeare. Convenient, isn't it? Way to stop the attacks is to lean into the very thing that makes everyone afraid of you. Reasons settle over him like armor. A key, not a curse. Then use it, he says. We find Amber, we end. Let the door he speaks open will not just reveal a monster. It will what kind of serpent Slytherin's heir truly is. Harry meets a prepared target. The way cursed things always do. Quietly, harmless, slipped into a stack of second-hand books as if it were dead paper and not a loaded spell. It over in his hands in the empty Slytherin common room, green fire painting the worn black cover. No name, just a tug under his skin, a whisper at the edge of hearing. Voice cuts through the memory like a knife. Objects never feel empty, Harry. They stare back. They want. What if this is one of them? He writes his name. He does not open his mind. He does what he was raised to do in a war built on secrets. He says evening, low and urgent, pulling her in the unused classroom they've turned into their private operations room. Chalk hangs in the air. Old desks stand in crooked rows like watching sentries. For this, she stared at the diary on the desk, then at him. Harry nods. Souls, manipulative magic. Things feed on attention. He said wouldn't stop at one Horcrux. Tastes bitter, but not new, not shocking. This story. That was the rule. He said with detection spells. Wand in precise patterns, Regulus drilled into him at Grimmauld Place. Her magic sharp and bright. The airs, ink shows on the blank page without a quill touching it. On standard curses, Hermione whispered. But the magic, Harry, it's... Walk away or look back at the thing staring at you. Harry feels the weight of creatures' stories about the locket, about the cave, about the night everything changed for Regulus Black. Then, Hermione watching, he writes one word. The ink's in. Silence stretches. Then letters bleed up from the page, black turning wet and alive. Potter. Grimmauld Place. Regulus over the kitchen table, Harry's latest letter spread open, his hands braced on either side. The word diary, the ink, the name, Tom Riddle, Dumbledore's old prize student, stare back at him. He feels not surprised, just confirmed. Wasn't just a legend, he says, voice flat. Creature nearby, ears trembling. What if he hid a fragment of himself in the school? He had seen a Horcrux up close. He had drunk the potion that guarded one. He had ordered her to destroy the locket and watched the house elf scream as it fought back. He knew the feel of magic. Hungry, possessive, thin as if between worlds. Hogwarts under attack. Not by a body, by a memory. Regulus is his breathing steady and writes back, every stroke deliberate. Use it carefully. Let it talk. Ask a chamber. Do not try anything it shows you. Do not go alone. He underlined the last sentence twice. Then he calls creature. We prepare extraction and destruction. Basilisk venom, fiend fire containment, black wards in the old ritual room. When that diary leaves Hogwarts, it dies. Cut muscle. Harry reads the reply, heart pounding. Hermione's are wide, but there is steel there. This war, and they have been training for it their whole lives. So Tom Riddle think he's winning, she says slowly. We follow clues into the chamber. We map it. We find the monster. And steps fully into the open, Harry answers, fingers resting on the diary's cover. Regulus will be waiting. The plans between them, terrifying, precise, necessary. Ink is on the page, inviting him back in. The castle's groan somewhere deep below, a distant echo of something ancient waking. Harry Quill. Tell me a chamber of secrets, he writes, because the next secret Tom Riddle reveals won't just open a door. It will decide who walks out of the darkness and who doesn't walk out at all. A father figure in the Chamber of Secrets. Open and full of whispers. Stone wets. Water drips. Harry's hand glows faintly on the diary page as ink rearranges itself into directions no second year should ever read. Pipe entrances. A map of monsters' veins running under the school. He doesn't know. Harry in Moaning Myrtle's bathroom with a wand in each hand. His and bear Regulus insisted he carry. Hermione's right, jaw set. Ron his wand so hard his knuckles are white. Gypsant. That abs hangs over them like a dead weight. What if this is exactly what he wants? Hermione whispers. How Regulus in her question. Measure the before you step. Choose how you bring it. Then we him the fight he planned. He Parseltongue. The sinkins aside. The pipes open, breath cold and damp. Slide, impact, silent. They wands lit, moving in tight formation drilled into them in Grimmauld Place's dueling room. Left, right, advance. It opens around them in a rush of scale and stone. Serpent into pillars. The colossus of Salazar Slytherin staring down, empty-eyed. They are not. Regulus Black stands between the fallen form of Ginny Weasley and the ghost-pale outline of Tom Riddle. His cloak torn, hair damp with something that might be water and might be blood. Creature is near Ginny's head, one hand on her chest, muttering old black family charms under his breath. Your Regulus says, not looking back, wand steady on the boy who isn't a boy. Riddles is slow and cruel. You brought a Regulus, the child traded one Dark Lord for? Harry's fury cut through the grief like a knife. He didn't anyone, he snaps, moving to Regulus's flank without thinking. Their formation clicks into place, father and son, front line. Regulus flick to Harry, a silent question. Ready? Harry nods. The basilisk comes when Riddle calls. The hiss rolls through the chamber, ancient and hungry. Stones as the serpent pours from Slytherin's mouth, scales scraping, eyes already closing at Harry's shouted warning. They've trained dragons and acromantulas, for giants and cursed constructs. Not his pattern, and they know how to break patterns. Jaw, Regulus snaps. Pattern 7. How blinding head, ricocheting off a pillar to strike the basilisk's sealed eyelid. A non-cut plausible spell, Regulus's own invention, follows. Fraxilla. A bone shatterer slams into the creature's jaw, snapping fangs askew. The bass screams. Hermione, don't freeze. Aguamenti maxima! Hermione floods the floor, water surging up the serpent's coils. Ron's glacius flash freezes it into slick, treacherous ice. Now! Regulus roars. Harry, under a swinging coil, rolls and drives Gryffindor's sword, summoned through sheer, stubborn worth, up between scales softened by repeated cutting charms. Regulus's yells hammer the same point. Confringo! Confringo! The basilisk convulses, then falls. Dead, the takes dust from Slytherin's stone beard. Silent. Riddles slowly, the diary at his feet, pulsing with dark ink. You learned from my followers, Regulus. Is low and without humour. I learned you're a coward who carved his soul rather than face his own fear of death. His never wavers. I was 17 when I realized the man I followed was just a boy hiding behind a new name. He steps, voice cutting through the chamber. You preach purity, but you stole magic from children. You preach strength, but you change your life to trinkets. You aren't a Dark Lord. You are a frightened child who refused to grow up. Riddles burn. Born from this girl, from your son, from anyone I choose. Harry is at the word son. Regulus doesn't. This story, Regulus said softly. The one we don't. Than Tom expects, faster than Harry has ever seen him move. Shield first. Presidio! A dome of shimmering magic slamming down between Harry and the diary. Then, the killing stroke. Luxanum ruptura! Light ears through the diary. Ink seams. Riddles for twists, mouth open in a silent howl as pages burn from the inside out. That's Regulus full in the chest. Harry into the shield, feeling the spell tear at the air, at something deeper. But holds, teeth bared, taking the brunt of the Horcruxes' dying curse. The die in two smoking pieces. Riddle on. Eyes flying open, memory clearer than in canon. She remembers the voice, the choices, the way the die fed on her secrets. Regulus, chest heaving. Because then Dumbledore sweeping in at the end of the story. This mother who walked into the dark first so his son wouldn't have to. And above them, the castle groans as if it knows the war has just changed shape. Slips further. Open and full of whispers. By the time this corpse is dragged from the pipes and Ginny Weasley is carried to the hospital wing, Hogwarts is a storm behind stone walls. Rumours faster than owls. A black heir, a former Death Eater, walked into the dark and came back with Harry Potter alive. What if that doesn't stay a rumour? It does. The board demands answers. The meeting happens 3 days later. Midnight, the night everything changed for Hogwarts politics. Along in a sealed room off the Great Hall, enchanted torches burning low. Dumbledore at one end, blue eyes shadowed. Lucius Malfoy among the governors. Kane resting by his chair. Augustum, straight-backed and furious. And Black, no longer a dead name on a tapestry, standing rather than sitting, because he refuses to look smaller than anyone here. Augusta says first, voice sharp enough to cut through the grief like a knife. 2 years ago, Albus. Last year, this year a basilisk, and now there was a Horcrux in this school. The one's heavy. Several flinch. One whisper, impossible. Not careless. His gaze leaves Dumbledore. You Tom Riddle's diary, or at least the pattern. You knew about Horcruxes. You did not tell Harry. You did not tell me. Does fold. Slow. Deliberate. I suspect, Black, suspicions are not the same as certainties. To spread such knowledge is danger. Regulus finishes, voice low. I know, I wore a master who carved his soul apart. But ignorance is deadlier. Ask the girl he died in your corridors. To the man who dove into the chamber with a parcel-mouthed child and came back with a slain monster and a destroyed Horcrux. His competence no longer theoretical, it is bloody and undeniable. Some governors stare with reluctant respect, others with suspicion usually reserved for loaded wands. Lucius is forward. And you the right to endanger the boy who lived on vigilante missions beneath the school. Regulator is immediate. I chose to raise him when I chose not to leave him on a Muggle doorstep because it was convenient for a war you wanted to manage from a distance. The very still. Dumbledore the balance shift and knows it. This story, the one where his quiet grip on events keeps slipping, inch by inch, every time Regulus steps into a gap he left. Picture of it. Regulus being creature from the cave. Regulus being Harry by black blood and black law. Regulus slaying monsters under his roof. All is control. Regulus is doing good. He also cannot predict his next move, cannot fold him neatly into the Order's plans. That uncertainty scares him more than Voldemort's name. Harry is under my protection as well. Dumbledore's softer now, but no less firm. There are forces at work you do not yet understand. Regulus is tired and razor thin. I understand entirely. I just trust them. The gun with no easy verdict, but a line has been drawn. Parents will hear Regulus Black,
not Albus Dumbledore, who killed the basilisk. Some will ranks. Some will demand his removal. The war for his soul has moved from shadows to minutes and motions. Later, the hospital wing, Dumbledore stands by Harry's bed. Moonlight spills white sheets. Harry is awake, eyes bruised with exhaustion but burning. "You have power this year," Dumbledore says. "In yourself, Mr. Black." Power is a burden, Harry. Its cost can be very great. Harry thinks in the chamber, spells screaming through the dark, choosing to walk ahead so Harry could follow. He thinks of the dark of Ginny's pale face. "The cost higher," Harry answers. Dumbledore gazes for a long, long moment. In the silence, the future tilts. Third year, a world where Sirius never went to Azkaban. The office tilts away. The castle falls behind, and somewhere in London, a different Black brother is already moving pieces on a board Dumbledore doesn't control. Third year, the year of escaped convicts and whispered betrayals in another timeline. But what if the convict never went to Azkaban at all? The night everything changed for Sirius Black was not Halloween. It was the next morning, in this world, when Regulus walked into the Aura office with a shaking house elf and a locket that screamed when touched. Kreacher's memory cut through the grief like a knife. The cave, the Inferi, Regulus's order to switch the lockets and escape. In canon, that was the moment he died. In this story, Regulus had prepared better. Blood-replenishing potions, a timed portkey keyed to Kreacher's panic. He vanished from that black lake half dead, officially missing, presumed dead, and used that status as a shield. So when Voldemort fell and the Ministry wanted a culprit, Regulus was already moving. He produced Peter Pettigrew's hair from an old Marauders prank, forced an Animagus revealing spell on the rat they found in a terrified Muggle flat, and stood in the interrogation room while Veritaserum stripped Peter bare. "I never betrayed them," Sirius said, voice raw, as Peter sobbed out the dark mark, the street, the explosion he had planned to frame an innocent man. Remus stared through the glass, hands clenched so hard his nails drew blood. In another universe, he would have doubted Sirius. In this one, he watched the dead come back in the form of truth. Sirius never saw Azkaban, but he was still a man who had lost his brother, his best friends, and 12 years of the future he thought he'd have. Free, yes. Damaged, absolutely. Harry stepped through the door of number 12 with his trunk, expecting only Regulus and Kreacher. Instead, a man with wild, dark hair and haunted grey eyes pushed off the wall, staring at him as if he were a ghost. "Harry," Sirius whispered, "you look Merlin. You look just like James." Behind him, another figure, tired eyes, threadbare robes, a gentleness that felt dangerous in a world at war. "Remus Lupin," he said quietly. "I was your father's friend." The room held its breath. A house that had rejected them now watched 3 versions of fatherhood collide. Regulus, precise and coiled with guilt. Sirius, all reckless devotion and barely contained rage. Remus, cautious, measuring every word. They argued that night about training Harry harder or keeping him safe, about whether to trust Dumbledore, whether to hunt Horcruxes now or wait. Harry listened from the landing, heart pounding, realizing this was the real magic he'd been given. Not one guardian, 3. 3 men who had survived the first war and refused to let him be a weapon in the second. He went to bed knowing their conflicting visions would shape him more than any prophecy. He woke to find that the war had already answered back. An owl was waiting at his window, ministry seal broken, message short. Sirius read it once, went dead white. "Regulus," he said, voice flat. "They've moved. He's not the only Black they're coming for." Pattern break. 3 Marauders, 1 Black Heir, and a kitchen argument. They hit the kitchen like a storm. Sirius didn't sit. He paced, boots scuffing the flagstones of Grimmauld Place,
wand still in his hand from the owl he'd blasted off the sill in a first blind flash of fear. Regulus stood at the table, back straight, fingers white around the edge of a folded ministry notice. Remus leaned against the counter, arms crossed, eyes tracking both brothers as if they were dueling already. On the stairs, Harry froze, bare feet, cold stone. The night everything changed had arrived in an envelope. "What if they come for him next?" Sirius demanded. "They've named you. Former associate of known Death Eaters. They'll use that to get to Harry." His jaw was clenched so tight the words almost cracked his teeth. Regulus's smile was thin and dead of humour. "Which is why we keep him out of sight, locked down."
Lessons here. Wards tightened. No more wandering Diagon Alley, so you can show him which broom you crashed in 5th year. Sirius whirled. "He's not a prisoner, Reg. He's a child. He deserves freedom, fun, Quidditch, friends, a life that isn't just war prep in a tomb." "Fun won't stop a killing curse," Regulus snapped. The old scar at his throat, pale and jagged from the cave, jumped with every word. "Discipline might, secrecy will. I won't watch another boy I'm responsible for die because we wanted to pretend the world was kind." Remus's gaze flicked between them. Calm voice, not calm eyes. "You're both right, and both wrong. Harry needs training, yes. He also needs to remember what he's fighting for. If all he knows is drills and fear, what stops him becoming another weapon?" From the stairs, Harry stared at the back of Regulus's head, the tense set of Sirius's shoulders, the thin white scars peeking from Remus's sleeves. The war was still written on all three of them. In tight jaws, in the way silence fell between sentences, heavy and listening, as if waiting for a spell to fly. "What if we don't give him a choice?" Sirius said suddenly. "We hide everything, keep him safe, and then one day the prophecy lands on his head, and he's furious that we lied." His voice dropped. "You remember what that felt like, Moony?" Remus flinched. Barely. Yes, Regulus didn't. He's 12. He doesn't need to be on missions. He doesn't need to know every detail of Horcruxes, of what the cave did to me. He needs to stay alive long enough for us to finish this. His fingers brushed his throat, as if feeling phantom hands dragging him under green water. "You train him here. I teach him control, occlumency, secrecy. He does not join the fight early. And when the fight comes here," Sirius threw back, "when the ministry kicks in our door because the black heir and the boy who lived vanished off their grid." Pattern interrupt. The doorframe creaked. Harry stepped off the stair and into the doorway. All three men turned. 3 sets of eyes. 3 different kinds of fear. "If this is about me," Harry said, heart hammering, "I want to be in the room. It's my future, my war." "I get a say in the story, don't I?" This is that story. Regulus's knuckles eased on the parchment. Sirius's shoulders dropped a fraction. Remus straightened. The choice was no longer theirs alone. A Dementor on the train. A lesson in fear. The train is a cage of cold and breath and whispers. 3rd year. Rain on the windows. Hermione's quill tapping a nervous rhythm as the countryside blurs past. Harry is in the middle of a sentence about Hogsmeade permission when the temperature drops so fast it steals the word from his mouth. Silence. Then the lamps flicker and die. He knows this cold. Not from memory, from training. Regulus's voice in the drawing room at Grimald, low and precise. "Dementors feed on fear. They drag you back to the night everything changed." Remus's voice layered over it, gentler but no less sharp. "You cannot bargain with them. You can only drive them away." The corridor outside screams. Someone's already seen it. Harry's hand is on his wand before Ron can finish. "What was—" He's standing, moving. The door slides open on a gust of frost. The Dementor looms there, rotting hand, tattered cloak, the dead weight of its presence slamming into his chest. For a heartbeat, Privet Drive explodes behind his eyes. The cupboard, the crack of Vernon's belt. Petunia's hissed,
You should have died with them. Then another memory shoves in front of it. Regulus in the cave, pale but alive in Harry's mind, because this is that story. A silver viper, coiling from his wand, in practice. Not yet solid, but bright enough to cut through the grief like a knife. Harry drags in air that feels like glass. Expecto! The word shudders. The Dementor leans closer. Lily's scream tears through his skull. Higher, roarer than he has ever heard it. James shouting. A flash of green. He almost falls. Harry! Hermione's voice, far away. His own heartbeat, thunder in his ears. He makes a choice. He thinks of Grimald's kitchen at midnight. Sirius burning toast and refusing to apologize. Hermione asleep over her arithmancy book. Ink on her cheek. Regulus's hand on Harry's shoulder the night before term. Quiet and fierce. You are not a weapon. You are my son. Expecto Patronum! The spell bursts from him. Not a stag. Not yet. A shield of misty silver flares between him and the Dementor. Thin but real. It staggers, cloak snapping. Then Remus is there. Move, Harry. His Patronus hits like a storm. A great blazing wolf surges down the corridor, jaws bared, driving the Dementor back into the rain and dark. Warmth rushes in its wake. The lamps flare. The door slams. Later, in the dim compartment, Remus watches Harry over steaming chocolate. Not the distant professor from Canon, but the man whose patched, scraped knees, who's sat with Harry through full moons and war stories. You reacted fast, Remus says, faster than auras would. But you went under, didn't you? What did you hear? Harry stares into the cup. The question is a spell, prying at the place he hides. My mum. My dad. Dying. A beat. And Regulus, begging Creature to leave him. I wasn't even there, but I hear it. Remus doesn't look away. Having a family doesn't erase the worst nights, he says softly. It just means you have more to lose. More reasons to stand back up in front of the thing that wants you on your knees. That's what the Patronus is, Harry. Not happiness, defiance. What if I fail? Harry asks. What if next time I'm not fast enough? Then we train, Remus answers. Harder, smarter, until your fear has to fight both of us to reach you. Harry thinks of Azkaban, of the war coming, of Regulus facing that cave alone. He thinks of Sirius laughing in the face of everything that tried to break him, of Hermione's hand gripping his on the platform. He doesn't want to survive on other people's sacrifices. Not again. I'm going to master it, he says. The full Patronus. Not just for me, for you, for Sirius, for Regulus, for everyone who stood in front of me before I could lift a wand. Remus's smile is tired and proud. Then let's make sure, he says, that the next time a Dementor walks into your compartment, it's the one that's afraid. Outside, the rain keeps falling. Inside, a different war is already being decided. The truth about Peter Pettigrew comes out early. Where is he? The question hangs between them the way Dementors hang over a train carriage, heavy and cold. Harry has just promised a different war. Regulus hears it, feels it, and something old and poisonous twists awake in his chest. Because there is still one loose thread from the first war. One lie everyone agreed to believe. Peter Pettigrew. Regulus doesn't say his name at first. He waits until Harry has gone to bed, until the house has fallen into that thick, watchful silence Grimmauld Place knows so well. Then he looks at Sirius across the kitchen table, the same table where they've planned wards, training, future. Your story, Regulus says quietly, never matched the evidence. Sirius stares at him. No screaming this time, just a dead, exhausted fury. Took you this long to bring it. Regulus's answer is a choice. Took me this long to have enough power to do something about it. This is that story. What if the Black brothers, who once tore a family apart with their choices, decided to rebuild one by dragging the truth into the light? What if the night everything changed in Godric's Hollow, didn't end with Sirius in Azkaban, but with a slow, relentless hunt for the rat who... They start with what only Marauders would know. Peter's house, his cowardice, the way he always hid in crowds, in noise, behind bigger names. Regulus adds black resources, old ledgers, informants who survived the First War, ward signatures on safe houses Peter used to visit. And then there is Creature can slip through wards no aura can touch. He can move between Muggle and magical London without a... When Regulus orders, "Find the rat who smells of burning metal and fear," the elf vanishes with a crack that seems to cut through the grief like a knife. Days later, Creature returns with a place. Not a dark alley. Not a hidden Diagon alley at mid. A joke shop window. A scurrying shadow that never quite leaves the crowd. Sirius almost tears the door off its hinges getting outside. They do not go alone. Regulus forces the issue, dragging Kingsley and a pair of wary auras into the plan, invoking House Black oaths and the Ministry's own laws about animagus. Remus comes because he refuses to let Sirius walk back into war without him. The alley is packed. Witches bargaining, Muggle-born families staring wide-eyed, children tugging at sleeves. Then the air changes. A spell cracks down the cobblestones as Regulus flings a net of silver magic low to the ground. Revelio, Animagus! The rat freezes, twists, screams. Bones lengthen, fur retracts, and Peter Pettigrew explodes into being in the middle of Diagon Alley. Wand in hand, eyes wild. For one heartbeat, the world holds its breath. Then someone whispers, "He's dead," and the entire street lurches. Sirius doesn't lunge. Not yet. He stands where everyone can see him. Voice raw but steady. "Tell them, Peter, tell them who gave the Potters away." Under wands, under aura eyes, under Regulus's cold, unblinking stare, Peter breaks. Veritaserum does the rest. The confession is taken there, in public, quill scratching as shop doors hang open, and the old story of the war begins to crumble. The Ministry cannot bury what half of Diagon Alley watched. Headlines scream. Trials reopen. Sirius Black walks out of the Wizengamot chamber a free man, officially exonerated. Harry's guardian beyond question, and the wizarding world, for the first time, is forced to ask, if they were wrong about this, what else about that war was a lie? Regulus already knows where that question leads. The werewolf, the animagus, and the Death Eater. Regulus does not celebrate when the verdict comes down. Sirius walks free. The Ministry stammers. The war is dragged into the light. Regulus is already in Grimmauld Place's drawing room, staring at a wall covered in notes and names and spells. This is where the real work begins. This is that story. 3 men, 1 child. A house steeped in old magic and older grief. What if the Black Brothers and the last Marauder tried to build something that wasn't a weapon? In the middle of a world that only understands war. They divide without meaning to. Regulus becomes the strategist. He is the one who wakes Harry before dawn, who walks him through wand grips and footwork, who turns the ballroom into a dueling pit. "Again," he says when Harry's shield charm flickers. His voice is flat, controlled, the same tone he once used taking orders from a Dark Lord. Only now, every choice is a rebellion against that dead allegiance. Sirius refuses to let the house swallow Harry whole. He is the one who drags Harry to the attic to show him a toy broom, who sneaks chocolate frogs into study sessions, who sits on the floor with him when nightmares about green light cut through the grief like a knife. "You're allowed to be angry," Sirius tells him, when Harry stares at the tapestry of the Black family tree. At them, at me, at all of it. Remus threads himself through the gaps. He is the moral compass and the quiet academic war general, sitting at the kitchen table with books open to obscure curses and counter-curses. Power without perspective is just another Dark Lord waiting to happen, he murmurs, quill tapping. He teaches Harry arithmancy patterns and the ethics of unforgivable curses in the same breath. He is the one who insists Harry learn Muggle history alongside magical, so he understands that wizards are not the only ones who have started wars and called it peace. They clash violently. Detention, not the Cruciatus lecture, Sirius snaps one night when Harry is caught hexing a portrait that screamed slurs at Creature. He needs to know exactly what that spell does, Regulus fires back. Ignorance is how children end up dead in real battles. Remus slams his book shut. Silence rings. He also needs to be 11, he says. Punishment first. Theory when he can breathe. School becomes another battlefield. Dumbledore suggests Hogwarts. Regulus argues for waiting, for private tutors and black family wards. Sirius wants Gryffindor for the Quidditch and the common room fire. Remus, watching Harry's face, asks the only question that matters. What do you want? Prophecy is the deepest fracture line. How much truth do you give a child who is already a symbol? Regulus wants every word on parchment, dissected and planned around. Sirius wants to delay it, to give Harry one more year of being just a boy. Remus insists on a middle path. Tell him there is a prophecy. Tell him it concerns him. Do not tell him he has to die for it. Yet, there are moments when all the arguments fall away. One storm-heavy evening, they stand in the same room, wands out, teaching Harry the Patronus charm years before any professor would. Regulus paces, dissecting the spell's structure. Remus anchors Harry's breathing, voice low and steady. Sirius is the memory, hand on Harry's shoulder, reminding him of flying over the orchard last summer. The first time he called this house home. 3 voices, 1 spell. And Harry's silver stag finally bursts from his wand and charges across the room. All 3 men move in perfect sync to steady him. Later, lying awake, Harry turns their arguments over in his head. Regulus's ruthless plans, Sirius's fierce, reckless love, Remus's relentless questions about right and wrong. He realizes that every disagreement has forced him to see another angle, another cost, another possible future. No single guardian could have given him that. He falls asleep, wondering, not for the first time, what will happen the day their choices collide with the prophecy they've tried so hard to control. Pattern break. A different third-year climax. Third year. The night everything changed doesn't begin with a time-turner. It begins with a name, whispered in the dark of the Slytherin common room. Regulus Black. Not dead. Not forgiven. Target. The war has been quiet for years, but grief remembers. There are Death Eaters who never accepted that the Black Heir walked out of the cave alive, who never believed the story of his mysterious disappearance. When word leaks that he's been seen at Hogwarts visiting his ward, the boy who lived, something shifts. What if they can't reach Harry through prophecy or politics? They can still make Regulus bleed. The attack doesn't come on the Quidditch pitch or in a corridor. It comes as parchment, a ministry summons, a formal challenge to Regulus's guardianship, citing his past mark and unfit moral character. The same week, Dementors grow restless at the borders of the grounds, and a quiet rumor slithers through the castle that a former Death Eater has slipped past the wards. Pattern interrupt. The Shrieking Shack isn't a haunted accident this time. It's chosen. Regulus sends Harry a single line through Creature. Midnight. Bring only those you would trust with your life. Harry stares at the note until the words blur, the choice settling on his shoulders heavier than his firebolt. He brings Hermione. He brings Draco, who has been walking a knife edge between family expectations and this new, dangerous loyalty to Harry. He does not tell Dumbledore. The shack groans around them, dust motes spinning in wandlight. Old Marauder graffiti scars the walls. Sirius and Remus are already there, wands drawn, flanking Regulus. Between them, bound in enchanted chains that hum with layered spells, kneels a captured Death Eater. Thorfinn Roll in this timeline, brutal and smug until Regulus's gaze cuts through the grief like a knife. Roll knows about the cave, about the locket, about the Horcrux hunt that never reached Dumbledore's ears. "This is it," Sirius says, voice rough. He walks out of here. He tells Voldemort you're alive and hunting his soul. The war changes overnight. Remus's eyes are tired, calculating. "We could obliviate him. It might not hold. We could hand him to the Ministry. Fudge will leak it in a heartbeat. Or—" He doesn't finish. Regulus does. "We kill him. Clean. Quiet. No story left to tell. Silence. Even the shack seems to hold its breath." Harry's stomach twists. He remembers every lesson, every debate at Grimmauld about means and ends, every time Regulus admitted what he'd done as a Death Eater and said softly, "I will not let you become me." Hermione's hand trembles in his. "Harry, we can't." Draco's voice is a whisper. "If he talks, my father will know everything. They'll come for you. For all of us." 3 guardians, 3 shadows on his future. Sirius, whose eyes screamed never again. Remus, who weighed every life. Regulus, who would burn himself to ash to keep Harry free. "What if there's another choice?" Harry asks. He steps forward until he can feel Roll's breath. Sour and scared now. "You're not dying here," Harry says, and everyone flinches at the word dying. "You're disappearing." He looks to Regulus. "We use black magic, not dark, old oaths, geases. Bind his tongue and his memory. Bury him in his own mind. He lives with what he's done, but he never speaks of you or the Horcruxes." Regulus stares at him, stunned. "That ritual is cruel." "Better cruel than dead," Harry answers, voice steady. "Better bound than a martyr. We're not murderers. We're not naive. We're something else." For the first time, all 3 of his guardians see it. He is not Sirius's recklessness, or Remus's restraint, or Regulus's ruthless strategy. He is the boy raised in the crossfire of all 3. This is that story. 4th year. A tournament no one can control. 4th year begins before Hogwarts, on a cliff of tents and roaring crowds, under a sky split by green and gold. Harry stands between his father figures and realizes the war has followed them here. The Quidditch World Cup is supposed to be a celebration, a family outing. Sirius buys ridiculous omnioculars for everyone. Remus has a notebook of Ministry security patterns. Regulus walks the campsite like a general, inspecting a battlefield. Creature gliding at his heel with a tray and a glare for anyone who stares too long. What if this wasn't just a match? What if this was reconnaissance? What if Voldemort's scattered followers were using the cup to measure how far they could push the world before it screamed? Harry feels it in the air. The thrum of thousands of wands, the tension under the laughter. He watches the Irish team streak green fire across the sky and pretends, for a few minutes, that this is all the magic is. Speed, skill, joy, not curses, not screams. Regulus doesn't pretend. His omnioculars never leave the top box, the minister's entourage, the foreign delegations. His hand tightens on the rail when he spots a sharp-faced man in Bulgarian robes, former inner circle, dead by ministry records, very much alive. "This is wrong," he murmurs, too low for the announcer's roar to drown for Harry, who's standing close. Too many ghosts in one place. The night everything changed at the Cup doesn't begin with the dark mark. It begins with a sudden, unnatural silence after the match. The way the crowd's joy drains into confusion. A scream cuts through the quiet like a knife, then another. Then the first house erupts into green fire. Masked figures march through the tents, spells cracking the air.
The Ministry calls it a riot. Regulus knows better. He recognizes wand work, posture, the cruel precision of people who believe they are untouchable. He recognizes faces. When masks slip, they recognize him. Black? One of them chokes, disbelieving, before Regulus's stunner drops him. Another hesitates, wand faltering, as if seeing a dead man walk has broken the spell of the moment.
Regulus moves with terrifying efficiency. Shielding charms, disillusionment, orders snapped to Sirius and Remus with the clipped authority of the boy who once led hunts for traitors under Voldemort's banner. Harry sees it all and understands. This is the other side of his father. The weapon he chose to become, so Harry would never have to. Back at Grimmauld, soot-streaked and shaking, they debrief around the war table. Maps, names, creatures' muttered reports. The dark mark over the campsite is not a symbol to Regulus. It is a message addressed directly to him. You failed to die. We are not finished. So when Moody arrives at Hogwarts, when whispers of strange wards and foreign champions spread through the castle, Regulus is already on edge. He attends the tournament's opening as a member of the board, eyes flicking from Dormstrang's ship to Beaubaton's carriage to Dumbledore's calm, infuriating smile. The goblet flares, one name after another. Victor Crumb, Fleur Delacour, Cedric Diggory. The hall relaxes. Then blue flame turns blood red. Harry Potter! The word lands like a spell. The hall screams, then falls into a choking silence as every eye turns to Harry. He doesn't move. He doesn't need to. He already feels Regulus's gaze from the stands, cold and calculating, cutting through the chaos. If this is a trap, it's confirmation. Voldemort is no longer content with shadows, but if it's a trap, it's also an invitation. Regulus Black stares down at his son and makes a choice. He will walk Harry into the fire, and he will use their enemy's own tournament to burn Voldemort's plans to ash. This is that story. Training for Dragons with a man who fought monsters. The room of requirement burns, not with fire, with dragons. Stone walls ripple into jagged cliffs, chains clank in the distance, and a low, bone-deep rumble rolls through the conjured arena. Harry stands in the center, wand raised, heart hammering. This is not a classroom. This is a rehearsal for war. Regulus paces the perimeter, cloak whispering, eyes on his son, the way he once watched Inferi drag at his ankles in that cursed cave. He remembers the green potion, the way it cut through the grief like a knife, the way the dead hands clawed and screamed. He designs this training around that memory. Brutal, precise, effective. What if the dragon doesn't behave? He asks quietly. What if it doesn't respond to standard control spells? What if it's been tampered with? He flicks his wand. The room obliges. The Hungarian horntail that appears is not real, but it feels real. Heat washes over Harry's face. Scales gleam like black iron. When it roars, the sound slams into his chest. His instincts scream, "Run." "Don't," Regulus says. Just that one word. Command, not comfort. Sirius leans against a conjured boulder, arms folded, jaw tight. He hates this. He also doesn't stop it. That's the choice. Raise a boy or raise a survivor. Remember your sky, Sirius calls. You're a seeker first. Ground is death. Height is control. He shifts, bones cracking, fur rippling, until Padfoot stands where Sirius was. The great black dog darts forward, drawing the dragon's yellow gaze, weaving in and out of its imagined fire. Animagus tactics in motion. Distraction, misdirection, speed. "Watch his angles, Harry!" Remus's voice cuts through the chaos. Creatures telegraph. Wing joints, eye ridges, the tail sweep. Don't fight the dragon, fight its habits. Remus stands at the edge of the arena, pale and steady. He's the one who made them build in non-lethal options, stunning spells aimed at nerve clusters, blinding hexes that wear off, sleep charms calibrated just shy of dangerous. He drills Harry not just to win, but to walk away without a dead creature on his conscience. Because Harry knows what dead eyes look like. He remembers Cedric's body in the future they are trying to outrun. He remembers his mother's story, the night everything changed, told in whispers at Grimald, until the grief became a weapon instead of a wound. He moves. Accio, broom! The spell cracks through the hot air. The summoned firebolt snaps into his hand. He's airborne in a heartbeat, the way Regulus once was as Slytherin Seeker, the way Sirius always said Potter blood belonged in the sky. For a moment, the fear feels clean, simple, dragon, egg, task. Then the other fear hits, the older one. He's bait again. Not for a basilisk this time, not for a possessed professor, not for a prophecy no one asked him about, for Voldemort, for Dumbledore's secrets, for a ministry that would rather a dead boy than a living symbol. What if they're wrong? What if all this preparation still ends with him on a graveyard floor, wand ripped from his hand, another body cooling beside him? Harry banks hard to avoid a swipe of the tail, anger flaring hotter than the phantom fire. He doesn't want to resent Regulus for this, but he does. He doesn't want to need this training, but he does. Below, Regulus tracks every movement, mind cataloguing weaknesses, contingencies, escape routes. He is not Dumbledore watching a chessboard. He is the man who crawled out of a cave of corpses and swore never to serve another master. Again! Regulus snaps when Harry executes the maneuver cleanly. Faster! Assume it learns! The room obeys. The dragon adapts. Its eyes grow sharper. Its feints more vicious. Harry's arm aches. Sweat stings his eyes. His magic thrums at the edge of exhaustion. Last run, Remus says, but his gaze meets Regulus's. They both know it isn't. Not really. The real last run will be out there, under open sky, with a real dragon and real fire, and no reset. The horntail rears, wings spread, shadow swallowing Harry whole. Regulus lifts his wand. Now, he whispers. The room of requirement shudders, and the rehearsal dragon opens its jaws for one final, killing blast, as the tournament day dawns just beyond the castle walls. Pattern break. A different graveyard, a different boy. The graveyard is wrong. Cold, wet grass, a toppled angel statue, the taste of portkey magic still buzzing on Harry's tongue as he hits the ground and rolls, wand already in his hand. He doesn't scream. He forces his breathing slow, counts 1, 2, 3, just like Regulus drilled into him, just like the rehearsals in the darkened cellar at Grimald, where broken chairs and dust sheets stood in for gravestones. What if the nightmare you've been warned about your whole life finally arrives, and you've memorized its opening moves? Harry pushes himself to one knee. Cedric's body is beside him, eyes open, shock frozen on his face. Dead. The word slams into Harry's chest, threatens to cut through the grief like a knife, but there's no time. There was a choice once. Save everyone, or save as many as you can. Graveyard, he whispers. Old magic, ritual site. Regulus's voice lives in his memory. Cold, precise. If he returns, he will choose a place layered in death and oath. Watch for the circle, watch for the blood. The cauldron squats ahead, steaming, greenish light licking its rim. A small, twisted figure cradles something against its chest. Wormtail. Harry recognizes the hunched shoulders, the shaking hands, the way his wand jerks. This is that story. Not an accident, not a fluke. A war planned over kitchen tables and in Black family vaults, where they mapped every known Horcrux anchor and every gap in Voldemort's protections. Harry's fingers brush the inside of his robes, feeling for the smooth, cold weight of the black signet ring. The emergency portkey rune etched beneath it thrums faintly. One touch, one word, and he's gone. Not yet. He watches Wormtail drag a bundle to the headstone of Tom Riddle Sr., watches the knife, the bone, the hand, the blood. Regulus had described this ritual in brutal detail, piecing it together from half-burned notes and the memories of Death Eaters who never realized what they'd confessed. Body restoration through Horcrux tethering, Harry mutters, low. Anchors already weakened. Interfere with the tether, not the cauldron. Patton interrupt. He doesn't aim at Wormtail. He aims at the grave. Confringo! The spell slams into the headstone, stone exploding, dust and bone shards flying. The cauldron rocks, green fire flaring wild. Wormtail screams as the ritual circle scorches and splits, runes tearing like paper. For a heartbeat, there is only silence. Then the thing in the bundle shrieks. Magic whips across the graveyard, raw and furious. The cauldron sucks in air, in light, in sound, dragging everything toward it. Harry feels the pull on his scar, on his very thoughts, as if something is clawing backward along the connection. Regulus has already destroyed the locket. The diary never reached Ginny Weasley. Somewhere, in a warded black vault, another Horcrux lies caged in cursed silver. The anchors are fewer. The tether is fraying. Voldemort still rises, but he is thinner, paler. His eyes burn red but flicker, as though the fire behind them is starving. When he draws breath, it rattles. When he turns his wand on Harry, his hand trembles, just once. You, he hisses. You have been busy. Harry stares back, heart pounding, feeling the outline of the plan pressing against his ribs. Duel if you must, but don't rely on luck. Regulus's rule. Every trap deserves a counter-trap. The Death Eaters apparate in, cloaks billowing, masks gleaming in the sick light. The circle closes. No Dumbledore, no order, no cavalry. Only the boy they thought they'd lured helpless. Harry lets his wand dip, just enough to look beaten. He whispers the activation word under his breath, thumb pressing hard against the underside of the ring. Choice, Regulus had told him long ago. Survive now, win later. Portkey magic grabs him as Voldemort raises his wand for the Cruciatus. He vanishes from the graveyard in a rush of colour and wind, Cedric's body yanked with him. By the second Portkey charm, Regulus insisted on layering into the Triwizard Cup. Back among the living, Harry will collapse in front of the stands, clutching a dead boy and a story no one is ready to hear. In the graveyard, Voldemort stands alone in the settling dust, weaker, panting, and suddenly very aware that someone has been dismantling his immortality for years, and that the war he thought he'd already won has only just begun. The war goes public, but on new terms. Harry's scream is still echoing in the stadium when the world tries desperately to pretend nothing has changed. They drag him to the hospital wing, Cedric's name hanging in the air like smoke. Reporters swarm the pitch, auras cordon off the maze, and in the middle of it, Cornelius Fudge is already sweating through his bowler hat, insisting this is a tragic accident, a miscast spell, anything but what it really is. He doesn't get away with it this time, because when they summon Dumbledore to the Ministry the next morning, Regulus Black walks in at his side. The atrium is packed, Wizengamot robes, quills hovering. The golden statues stare down in polished silence as Fudge rounds on Harry, on Dumbledore, on anyone who will let him keep the world simple. You know who is dead, he snaps. We all saw it. What if you didn't? Dumbledore's voice is quiet, but it cuts through the grief like a knife. He lays out the graveyard, the portkey, the ritual, the failed resurrection. He talks about wand cores and priori incantatem, and spells that do not belong to school children. Then Regulus steps forward. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. "You are arguing about a body you never found," he says. "I served him. I watched him split his soul. I stole one of his anchors myself." The word hangs there, anchor. Not yet Horcrux, not in public, but he sets the locket on the table. Its metal dead and dull, and magic in the room recoils. Dumbledore calls it a dark artifact, destroyed at great cost. Regulus calls it proof that Voldemort never intended to die. Their stories are aligned, but framed differently. Scholar and traitor, theory and confession. Together, they leave Fudge with no air to breathe. Because what is safer politically? To brand Regulus Black a dangerous ex-Death Eater and admit the Ministry missed him, missed this, for 15 years? Or to quietly, desperately, enlist the one man who understands these anchors better than anyone alive? Behind closed doors, the debate turns vicious. Some want him in Azkaban. Some want him in charge of a new task force. In the end, fear wins. They give him a controlled role, a leash made of parchment and oaths, and pretend it isn't wrapped around their own throats instead. Out in the shadows, Voldemort hears. He has no body yet. Not really, but he has ears, spies, whispers of a destroyed locket, of a boy who survived his graveyard, of the Black Heir standing beside Dumbledore in open defiance. Someone close to him has betrayed his secrets. Someone who knew about the cave, the protections, the cup and the ring, and the map only he was meant to hold. His rage is cold now, not screaming. He turns his suspicion on every former Death Eater who ever faltered, on those who claimed to be imperious, family that slipped through his fingers the night everything changed. That story. Or doesn't creep in through rumors this time. It is in headlines and emergency decrees, in hastily reactivated Auror units and a ministry that can no longer pretend the Dark Lord is dead. Harry is not alone in a cupboard, waiting for adults to notice the storm. He's in a fortified black household that has been preparing for this since before he could walk.
Regulus has already dismantled one Horcrux.
Has read every line on soul magic they dared to keep. And Remus are drilling them in curses the Ministry still pretends children don't know. Has begun. Time. Harry and his family are not scrambling to catch up. They are already moving. Already hunting, all 3 steps ahead of a monster who finally realizes he is being stalked. Decides no, it won't stay in the shadows for long. 5th year, the politics of power and prophecy. 5th year begins with no breathing room. The war has slipped out of the shadows, and Harry walks into Hogwarts not just as a student, but as a symbol everyone is already arguing over. Boy who lived, Heir Black, Regulus's weapon, Dumbledore's hope. What if the DA had been built in the open, with adults who actually knew there was a war coming? This is that story. Harry juggles essays on goblin rebellions with drilling non-verbal Expelliarmus until his throat is raw from unspoken words. He is exhausted. He is alive in a way he cannot explain. When younger students stare at him, waiting for reassurance, he forces himself to stand straighter, to look like the victory they need. The prophecy comes on a rain-lashed night. Regulus and Dumbledore summon him to the headmaster's office together. That alone tells Harry this is the night everything changed. Fawkes is silent on his perch. The silver instruments have been pushed aside to make room for a single, shallow stone basin, the pensive.
Dumbledore's voice is soft as he explains the fragment Sybil Trelawney spoke.
Neither can live while the other survives. The words hang in the air like a killing curse that never lands. Regulus cuts through the grief like a knife, filling in the part Dumbledore does not soften. This is not fate as prison, but design as weapon. Voldemort marked Harry because he believed in the same prophecy. Harry listens. He doesn't scream. He doesn't shatter. Instead, something inside him slots into place with a terrible, cold clarity. He had already suspected the scar, the dreams, the way Voldemort's attention always snapped back to him. "So it's me," he says. "It was always going to be me." Silence, rain against the windows. Two of the most powerful wizards alive, staring at a 15-year-old who suddenly looks older than both of them. Dumbledore talks of love as the power Voldemort knows not, of Harry's choice to fight, defining the prophecy, rather than the other way round. Regulus speaks of strategy, of Horcruxes, of turning destiny into a blade they control. War, not martyrdom. Harry hears both. Then he makes his own choice. "I'm done being briefed after the fact," he says, voice steady. "If there's a prophecy about me, if Voldemort is moving because of me, then I'm in the room. All of them. Every war council that uses my name. You don't get to plan around me while I'm revising for charms." Dumbledore hesitates. Regulus does not. "He's right," Regulus says. "We trained him for this. Treat him as what we made him." The headmaster's refusal dies on his tongue. He nods, slow, grave, as if something old in him is finally conceding defeat to the boy he tried to keep a child. From that night, the map of the war changes. Every major meeting at Grimmauld Place, every strategy session in Hogwarts' deepest rooms, now has Harry at the table, a student with ink on his fingers and a target on his back, forcing the adults to see that the weapon they forged has a will of his own. And Voldemort, sensing the shift without yet knowing its source, begins to move faster. The Department of Mysteries. Without the manipulation, the chamber is open and full of whispers. Not the Chamber of Secrets, the chamber in Harry's mind. A black, cold space where a snake's eye view of a dark corridor unspools without warning. Glass spheres, dust, a door marked with a brass plate. The Department of Mysteries. Harry jerked upright in his bed at Grimmauld Place, heart pounding, hand already reaching for the notebook Regulus had ordered him to keep. The vision hadn't felt like a dream. It had felt placed, heavy, oily. Regulus had a word for that weight. Foreign, he'd said. Wand pressed lightly to Harry's temple. In the drawing room days earlier, the air humming with occlumency wards. Your mind has a taste. Voldemort's has another. When something doesn't taste like you do not accept it. You examine it. You decide what use it has in this war. So Harry stared at the memory now, replaying the angle, the rhythm of the snake's movement, the way the thought pressed against his own. It was wrong. It didn't slot into his grief or his anger. It sat on top of them. What if, he thought, this isn't a trap I fall into, but a window I look through? Regulus listened in silence as Harry described every detail over breakfast, fingers steepled, eyes distant in that way that still scared Harry sometimes. The way of a man who had once worn the dark mark and remembered exactly how its master thought. "He wants you to run there," Regulus said finally. "Alone, panicked. Dumbledore will assume the same pattern as last time. That is his mistake. Our advantage is that you are not alone, and you are not a child raised in a cupboard. You are a black heir, trained in occlumency." Choice settled in Harry's chest, cold, clear. "This link goes both ways," he said. "So we use it." That night, Harry lay back in his bed and did what Regulus had drilled into him for months. Wall first, sweep of calm, a tightening of mental muscles, the practiced memory of flying over the Hogwarts pitch until his thoughts were smooth and bright. Then, deliberately, he opened a crack. He fed Voldemort impressions, not lies exactly, misleading truths. The Order arguing to keep Harry safe at Grimmauld. Dumbledore insisting Harry knew nothing of the Hall of Prophecy. Harry pacing, restless, but never once picturing the real plan. Coordinated strike, not a rescue mission. This is that story. The one where the Department of Mysteries isn't a blind stumble into death. The night everything changed because a 16-year-old weapon learned to aim himself. They went in as a unit. Harry, Hermione, Ron, Neville, Ginny, Luna, each drilled in shield formations and silent casting. Behind them, under disillusionment and old black family cloaking charms, came the adults who had been warned days in advance. Sirius, Remus, Regulus, Tonks, Kingsley. Grimald's war council, walking into the Ministry's heart. The unspeakables never saw them enter. The Death Eaters did. Spells screamed through the Hall of Prophecy, blue and red and sickly green. Shelves toppled. Orbs shattered. The prophecy that had ruled Harry's life fell and broke at his feet. Words lost to the dust and echoing silence. No veil, no archway, no godfather laughing before he fell dead. The war still demanded blood. In the chaos, Bellatrix's curse clipped Regulus instead of Sirius, searing through his side, slamming him into a stone pillar. Harry felt the pain through the link before he saw it, a flare of white that cut through the grief like a knife. Regulus staggered, stayed standing, wand hand steady, even as blood soaked his robes. "Move, Harry," he shouted, voice raw. "Remember your training." Harry did. He drove the strike team back in formation, shields overlapping, adults closing ranks, the Death Eaters forced to retreat under coordinated fire. When the dust settled, the prophecy was gone. The Ministry exposed, and Voldemort had seen far more than he intended through their shared window. And somewhere in that dark, shattered hall, Regulus Black struggled to stay conscious, knowing the next choice he made might tear the war wide open. Pattern break, a 6th year built on open secrets. Regulus woke in St. Mungo's to white light and silence. No Ministry screaming, no dark mark burning. Just the slow, painful realization that he was still alive. The war was not. Dumbledore visited that night. Not the night everything changed in the Ministry atrium, the night after, when the healers were distracted and the ward was empty. "And I can no longer afford to work alone." His gaze shifted to the doorway. "Nor can you," because Harry was there, 16, shoulders tight, a faint scar of spell burn along his jaw from the battle, the Black's signet ring glinting on his hand. He stepped inside on silent feet, every inch the air of a house that had survived by knowing more than it said. "You're talking about Horcruxes," Harry said. "Not a question. You're not doing it without me." In canon, Harry is dragged into this horror late, half-informed, lied to for his own good. In this war, raised by a man who walked out of the cave alive, he's in the room from the first theory to the last plan. So the pattern breaks. 3 generations, 3 houses. A Gryffindor headmaster, a Slytherin ex-Death Eater, and a boy who wears both legacies on his skin. They spread maps across the bed, old black family grimoires beside Dumbledore's notes, creature hovering with a muttered inventory of dark objects Voldemort once coveted. "Tom made at least 1 Horcrux before the locket," Dumbledore said. "Slughorn knows more than he admits. I need a memory he has altered." Regulus went still. The name was a knife from another life. Slughorn, who had smiled at him in Slytherin green, who had praised his promise and looked away when that promise put on a mask. "You're pushing him wrong," Regulus said. "He's not afraid of you. He's afraid of being remembered as the man who handed immortality to a monster." His eyes met Harry's. "He'll run from guilt, but he'll crawl toward flattery." Harry frowned. "So what? Tell him he was brilliant for spotting Riddle's talent?" "And terrified," Regulus added. "Appeal to both, his vanity and his fear. Make it safer in his mind to confess than to stay silent. Tell him this memory could help end the war he's been hiding from since the first one." Dumbledore watched them, fingers steepled, measuring the new geometry of trust in the room. "You would share the details of Horcruxes with a 16-year-old? He asked quietly. Regulus didn't flinch. "I already did. Years ago, I told him what you kept from me. That was my choice. Harry's jaw clenched, but he didn't look away from Dumbledore. You told me I had a right to know why Voldemort keeps coming back, why my parents died. You were right.
Both of you. The old pattern. Dumbledore deciding, Harry obeying, adults whispering in other rooms, cracked under the weight of that shared gaze. They argued methods, Dumbledore insisting some risks must be his alone. Regulus demanding redundancies, escape routes, contingency spells. Harry refusing to be benched while people he loved walked into the dark. But when the candles burned low and the plan solidified, one thing was clear. The mission was no longer Dumbledore's secret burden. It belonged to all three of them now. They would hunt Horcruxes together through Slytherin memory, Gryffindor courage, and a boy who had been raised to see the whole board. And somewhere between those clashing methods, a new kind of war was about to begin.
Draco Malfoy's crisis in a world where Harry understands him. The castle felt different once the Horcrux hunt had a name. Corridors that used to just echo with footsteps now carried the weight of a war only a handful of people could see coming. Harry noticed it first in the way Draco Malfoy stopped performing. He still sneered in the corridors, still threw barbed words at Gryffindors, but the edges were frayed. His hands shook when he thought no one was watching. He stared too long at the dark mark burned into the sky over the prophet's headlines, eyes gone flat and distant. Harry knew that look. He'd seen it in Regulus on the nights Creature whispered about the cave. The nights Regulus woke up gasping, remembering inferi hands dragging him under. The night everything changed for him had been the night he chose to walk away from Voldemort and fake his own death. That story had been carved into Harry's bones as a warning and a map. What if Draco was standing on that same razor edge? In this timeline, Harry didn't dismiss Slytherin ambition as simple cruelty. He'd grown up at a black table, hearing about blood politics and survival bargains. He knew what it meant when a boy who had always been loud suddenly moved through school like a ghost, haunting his own life. He caught Draco alone outside the room of requirement, pale and sweating, fingers pressed to the wall as if he could will it to open faster. "Malfoy," Harry said quietly, no mockery, no audience, just a choice laid bare in a single word. Draco flinched. "Get lost, Potter!" But his voice cracked on the last syllable, a raw edge that cut through the grief like a knife. Harry thought of Regulus's voice, low and hoarse, telling him, "There's always a door out. You just have to pay the price of walking through it." He stepped closer. "I know he's using you," Harry said. "Voldemort, I know the signs. You're not the first boy he's tried to turn into a weapon and then leave dead on the floor when it goes wrong." Draco's wand was in his hand in an instant. The spell never left his lips. The room of requirement opened into a narrow, dim corridor, lined with broken cabinets and dust-covered trunks. It felt more like a confession booth than a sanctuary. The door shut behind them with a soft click that sounded to Draco like a lock. "Say it," Harry pushed. "Say what he told you to do." Draco's composure shattered. He screamed at Harry to shut up, to mind his own business, to stop pretending he understood. Then the words poured out anyway. The vanishing cabinet, the assassination order, his mother's tears, his father's disgrace, the impossible task that had been wrapped around his throat like a noose. "I don't have a choice," Draco choked. "It's my family." Harry stared at him, seeing not an enemy, but another boy on an altar someone else had built. "There's always a choice," Harry said. "Regulus made one. I'm offering you another. You help us, and we find a way to keep your mother breathing. You miss, and Voldemort kills you. You play along with us, and maybe he doesn't see the knife aimed at his back." Silence stretched between them, thick as smoke. This is that story. The one where a Malfoy doesn't just sneer and walk away. In the end, Draco didn't swear loyalty. He didn't fall to his knees. He just nodded once, sharp and terrified. After that, rumors started moving strangely. Hints of which Death Eaters were being invited into the castle. Half-heard plans about the astronomy tower. Tiny corrections to the Order's maps that only someone standing in Voldemort's shadow could make. Draco Malfoy became a leak inside the Dark Lord's camp, passing information through carefully charmed scraps and misdirected owls to Harry and Regulus. And as the noose tightened around Hogwarts, the question shifted. Not just whether Dumbledore would die on that tower, but what if, this time, the trap waiting there had been laid by a Black and a Malfoy working together? The astronomy tower without a martyrdom script. The cave is open and full of whispers. Green light on black water. The lapping of the lake. The distant scrape of something that should be dead and isn't. This is not a memory Harry watches from a pensive. This is the night everything changed for the war. Dumbledore stands at the edge of the stone island, wand raised, face carved with exhaustion and iron will. Regulus stands beside him, gaunt and steady, the man who has been here before. Between them, the basin glows with that sickly, pulsing potion Harry has only seen in Regulus's nightmares. What if we do not pour this down anyone's throat? Regulus's voice is low, clipped. Last time, I drank. I remember enough to know we cannot afford to lose you. Canon demanded a martyr. This story has learned from its dead. Dumbledore's eyes flicker to Harry, to the way his hand clenches his wand so hard his knuckles blanch. The potion must be removed. It cannot be vanished. It cannot be scooped. It must be drunk. That is the spell. Regulus doesn't argue with the magic. He argues with the choice. Then we share it. Old blood and new. Black and Dumbledore. He meets the headmaster's gaze, unflinching. You told me once that sacrifice is powerful. So is refusing a single, neat martyrdom. In the end, they weave something terrible and brilliant. Regulus calls creature with a word that echoes off the cave walls, binds the elf's hand to his own, and layers black family magic over Dumbledore's protections. 3 drinkers, 3 anchors. The potion still burns, still drags horrors out of their chests until Harry thinks his own grief will scream its way free. But it does not break any one of them completely. Dumbledore staggers, but he can still stand. Regulus shakes, but his eyes stay clear. When the Inferi rise, it is Harry who ignites the ring of fire, his spell a white-hot line that seems to cut through the grief like a knife. They leave the cave with the locket, and with something else, a plan that does not rely on Dumbledore dying exactly on schedule. So when the astronomy tower trap finally springs, the pieces are already moving. Draco's wand is shaking in Dumbledore's face. The wind howls around them, bringing the smell of rain and the faint, metallic tang of the dark mark hanging above the school. Harry is frozen under the cloak by Dumbledore's order, but he is not alone in his knowledge now. Draco is not alone in his fear, because weeks before, in a forgotten classroom, Draco Malfoy had stared at Regulus Black and Harry Potter and whispered, "I can't do this." And they had believed him. Draco's hand trembled. He'll kill my parents. Regulus steps from the shadows at the edge of the tower, wand already drawn, hood down so Draco can see his face. He will kill them anyway, he says, voice calm over the storm. Unless we end this war on our terms. Snape arrives on cue, black robes snapping, face unreadable. In canon, this is the moment of a fixed script. Here, 3 Slytherins and 1 dying legend are playing a different game. Dumbledore is weaker from the cave, but not broken. His hand curls around the wand he has not dropped. "Severus," he said, and there is no plea in it this time, only decision. They had argued in Grimmauld Place, in whispers that made Harry's stomach twist. Dumbledore insisting his death could be a shield. Regulus insisting they were done throwing themselves into graves for the greater good. In the end, they forged a compromise as ruthless as any curse. Snape lifts his wand, but instead of the killing curse, his spell slams into Dumbledore's chest with a burst of blinding blue. A severing, not of life, but of binding. The Elder Wand's allegiance. The cursed hand. The web that ties Dumbledore's power to the school. Dumbledore collapses. Not dead, but diminished. Magic bleeding out of him into the stone of the tower, into wards that flare gold for one heartbeat and then vanish. The Death Eaters see an old man fall. They see Snape's wand raised. They see what they think is murder. Only Harry, Regulus and Draco stand over the crumpled headmaster, knowing this is something else. A sacrifice rewritten. A leader taken off the board before he can be used as a symbol. Lightning cracks overhead. The dark mark hangs, pulsing. And as Snape hauls Dumbledore's barely breathing body toward the shadows, as Draco's choice hangs in the air between them, Harry realizes the truth. The war hasn't been delayed. The final battle has already begun. But what if the next move belongs to them? Pattern break. No camping, just war rooms. The castle doesn't sleep. Hours after the tower, after the night everything changed, Harry is not in a tent, shivering over a dying fire. He is in a war room. Number 12, Grimmauld Place. The drawing room table is buried under parchment. Maps of Britain, floor plans of Gringotts, a moving blueprint of Hogwarts, its tiny staircases grinding and shifting. Wax drips onto the edge of a chart tracking Death Eater sightings, pins, threads, enchanted tokens. The Black family silver glints between stacks of strategy. Harry stands at the center of it all, shoulders tight, jaw set. Of age now, no Dursleys, no wandering in the woods waiting for doom to find him. This is that story. What if we stop reacting? He says, voice rough. What if we hunt him? Regulus doesn't flinch. He looks older than his years, the cave carved into the lines around his mouth, but his eyes are clear. We've already started, he answers. The locket, the ring, the diary, 3 pieces dead. That's why he's desperate. Creature appears with a crack of displaced air, placing a tray of tea among the maps as though this were an ordinary family meeting. It isn't. The air tastes of ink and metal and fear. On the far wall, a charmed tapestry flickers. Voldemort's known movements traced in burning thread. Godric's Hollow, the Department of Mysteries, the Albanian Forest. Every place Regulus has tracked. Every rumour the Order has confirmed, stitched into a moving constellation of war. They don't camp, they commute. One day, Harry is at Grimmauld Place, arguing over timelines with Hermione as she measures out the wolfsbane she still brews for Remus between missions. The next, he is at Hogwarts, slipping through hidden passages Regulus mapped years ago, meeting McGonagall in her office as they whisper about wards and old castle magic. The day after that, he is in a safe house in Wales, parchment spread over a kitchen table, while Kingsley and Tonks dissect Death Eater patrol patterns. No isolation, no endless, hopeless wandering. Every movement is a choice. Regulus's early work has already thinned the field. He stares at a list inked in his own sharp hand. Diary, destroyed. Ring, destroyed. Locket, destroyed. Nagini, marked. Unknown artifact, missing. Unknown anchor, unknown. Fewer Horcruxes, Hermione says, fingers trembling over the parchment. But the ones left, he's had years to fortify them. Good, Regulus answers, and the word cuts through the grief like a knife. If they're hard to reach, they're hard to move. We can pin him. Pattern interrupt. The table shudders. Not from a spell, from an idea. It comes from Ginny, quiet until now, eyes fixed on the moving model of Hogwarts. Tiny, ghostly figures drift through its corridors. Students, staff, portraits. The room of requirement flares in and out of existence. A pulsing, uncertain space on the 7th floor. Look, she whispers. It's wrong. The magical model shows the castle's wards as bands of light. Tonight, one band around the central tower flickers. a dark vein pulsing through it, a wound, a parasite.
What if the last anchor isn't an object you can steal? Ginny asks. What if it's the castle itself?
Silence slams down. Harry stares at the tiny tower, at the place where everything began for him. The first feast, the sorting, the prophecy overheard in a nearby room years before he was born. Hogwarts, tied to Voldemort's soul. The war room feels suddenly smaller. Every map on the table points to the same place. The hunt hasn't taken them away from school after all. It's bringing them home for the final strike. The final battle for a very different Hogwarts. The castle is already bracing for war when they return. Hogwarts, the night everything changed for a generation of children, now stands ready to decide the fate of the entire world. What if this last stand isn't a desperate scramble, but the culmination of years of training, planning, and hard choices? Harry stands in the Great Hall, not as a boy pushed forward by prophecy, but as a commander surrounded by his people. Maps hover above the house tables, shifting as Professors Flitwick and McGonagall charm them to reflect moving forces. The air hums with whispered spells, and the scrape of benches as students from every house crowd in, staring up at him. Lines of defense, Harry says, voice steady, wand tip illuminating sectors of the floating castle. Gryffindor and Hufflepuff on the main corridors, Ravenclaw on the upper staircases controlling sightlines. Slytherin, he pauses, feeling every gaze sharpen. This is that story where Slytherin doesn't stand apart by default. He meets the eyes of the 7th-year Slytherins who once mocked him, of younger students who wear green and silver and fear being treated as suspects. You know how Death Eaters think, Harry continues. You know their families. You know their curses. You're our counters. You stay inside, intercept anyone trying to open the gates, and you keep the younger years alive. It is a choice, not an accusation. Slowly, heads nod. A few Slytherins flinch at the word families, grief flickering across their faces, but they straighten. Draco Malfoy's jaw tightens. He steps forward, shoulders rigid. We hold the dungeons, he says. No one uses my house as a backdoor for this war. Outside the walls, Regulus Black moves through darkness that once owned him. His strike team is lean and lethal. Seasoned Order members, a squad of Aurors who trust his instincts, and a handful of older students who refused to stay behind. The forest edge crawls with approaching Death Eaters, their masks pale blurs between the trees. Regulus watches the formation, reading it the way he once read Quidditch plays. They'll split in 3, he murmurs. Decoy on the left, real push through the center, giants lagging behind. His voice is quiet, but it cuts through the night. We don't meet them head on. We cut the center from the side and drive them into their own giants. Confusion first, killing blows second. He knows their signals, their arrogance, their blind spots. He was their golden boy once, and that knowledge now turns like a blade in his hand. Back in the castle, the first explosion rattles the stone. Dust drifts from the rafters. Harry's heart slams, but his mind stays clear, anchored by years of the Marauder curriculum, by Regulus's relentless drills. The corridors erupt into motion. Creature appears at Harry's side with a crack. Armor has been strapped over his bent shoulders, ill-fitting but defiant. Behind him, a tide of house elves fills the entrance hall. Tea towels and mismatched uniforms transformed into battle colors. Their eyes burn. Creature will fight for Master Regulus's house, he snarls. For Master Harry, for Hogwarts. They surge into the fray earlier than in canon, flooding staircases and side passages, disarming Death Eaters with brutal, efficient magic honed over lifetimes of invisibility. A masked witch screams as her wand vanishes mid-curse. A giant stumbles, tripped by invisible bindings around its ankles. In a shattered corridor, Harry ducks a blasting curse and comes up beside Draco and a breathless Hermione. Rubble smoulders. The air tastes of stone dust and burning. Draco's hair is singed, his hands shaking, but his wand is steady, guarding a cluster of terrified first-years in mixed colours. "Don't just stare," he snaps at a tiny Ravenclaw. "Shield charm, now!" For a heartbeat, the old enmity hangs between him and Harry. The memories of taunts, hexes, choices almost made. Then a Death Eater rounds the corner, spell already forming, and they move together without thinking. Harry's shield, Draco's stunner, Hermione's binding curse. The attacker hits the ground, dead to the fight, if not dead in truth. Silence falls in that corridor for a single, fragile second. It feels like a new world cracking open. Outside, Regulus's plan works too well. Death Eater reinforcements slam into their own giants, curses crossing, lines breaking. He drives them back, step by ruthless step, reading their panic, exploiting every hesitation. This is the war he was bred for, turned inside out. Then, impossibly, the dark mark above the castle flares brighter, and the spells begin to falter, not from exhaustion, from command. A voice, magnified and cold, rolls over the grounds and through the shattered windows, seeping into every corner of the castle. Enough! Voldemort's magic presses down, smothering even the giants still. "I will grant a ceasefire," he hisses, words threading through stone and bone. "Send out Harry Potter, or Regulus Black may watch his carefully trained army die, one by one." Harry feels every eye turn toward him. He knows, with a clarity that cuts through the grief like a knife, that Voldemort understands far more about him in this timeline, and that he, in turn, knows far more about the man waiting in the dark. The war pauses on a breath. The final confrontation is no longer a boy walking alone into the forest. It is a meeting between two generals who have studied each other for years, and Harry steps forward, already choosing how this story ends. The forest, the Hallows, and a choice made with open eyes. The forest is not quiet. It breathes. It watches. It remembers every spell ever screamed between these trees, every body that fell and lay staring up at uncaring stars. Harry walks at its center. He is not guessing. He is not hoping Dumbledore was right. For years, at Regulus's kitchen table, over tea gone cold and parchment covered in cramped diagrams, he has traced the line from Godric's Hollow to this path. Horcrux theory, splintered souls, the way the curse rebounded, the night everything changed. "This is why it didn't kill you," Regulus had said once, tapping the scar with a careful wand. "He was already less than whole. You carried the fragment that should have anchored him, a parasite, not a gift." Tonight, Harry feels it, the wrongness in his scar, a presence that has never been him. He knows, down to the exact ritual notation inked in Regulus's old arithmancy books, what happens when a Horcrux body kills its own container. He has read the Black family grimoires on soul magic that Dumbledore never trusted himself to open. He also knows the Hallows are not a children's tale, not to a Black. The cloak on his shoulders is older than Hogwarts. Regulus told him the Peverell lineage over a map of ancient alliances, tracing names that married into House Black. Hermione cross-referenced Beedle's tale with ritual lore. Remus dug through werewolf folklore for parallel myths. Together, they built a theory. The Hallows are not about conquering death, they're about walking toward it with open eyes. Back at the edge of the forest, that theory became a choice. Regulus's hands shook first. Not when he faced Inferi in the cave, not when he faked his own death to tear down a Dark Lord from the shadows. Here, with his son. Because that is what Harry is, saying, "I have to go." "You don't have to do anything," Regulus hissed, voice low, controlled, the way it always is when he is most afraid. "We find another way. We always find another way." Harry laid the resurrection stone in his palm like evidence. "There isn't one. You taught me that. You showed me the math. His voice broke, then steadied. If he kills me, he kills the piece of himself in me. Your war ends faster, fewer dead. Sirius didn't argue strategy. He argued time. Give us an hour, he begged, fingers digging into Harry's shoulders. 10 minutes. Let me go in your place. Let me. You can't carry his soul, Harry whispered. I can. That's the point. Remus's silence cut through the grief like a knife.
He had seen too many children walk into battle, too many not walk out.
You're sure? He asked, finally. Not of the theory, of Harry. Harry met his eyes. I'm not going to die because someone lied to me. I'm choosing this. With everything I know. What if, in this story, no one has to be tricked into heroism? They did not bless it. They did not forbid it. Regulus pressed his brow to Harry's, whispering an old black warding charm that sounded suspiciously like a prayer. Sirius shoved the cloak into his hands and said, "Make it count." Remus clasped his shoulder, the way he did before every full moon, and breathed, "Come back if you can, break him if you can't." Now the cloak wrapped around him, the stone warm against his fingers. Harry walks, not a lamb, a strategist.
He counts the Death Eater's patrol patterns he memorized from stolen reports. He feels the way the Elder One's allegiance hums faintly through the air. Not quite Voldemort's, not quite anyone's. Because in this timeline, Draco's disarming and Harry's own victories have tangled the Wand's loyalty into a knot only this act can sever. He turns the stone. They come, not as ghosts, but as the echo of every lesson they ever gave him. James, Lily, Regulus, Sirius, Remus, all the dead who shaped this war, not to mislead him, to witness his choice. He steps into the clearing. Voldemort waits, eyes red, wand raised. He has studied Harry too. He thinks he understands this boy. Harry understands the magic better. He does not beg. He does not run.
He lets his wand hang loose at his side, feels the Horcrux in his scar shudder as it senses its maker. This is that story. The green light builds at the tip of Voldemort's wand, a gathered storm. For one breath, Harry's mind is brutally clear. The Horcrux, the Hallows, the war that will pivot on this second. He opens himself to it. Avada Kedavra! The spell hits. The world goes dead and silent. And somewhere between life and death, something older than either of them stirs and waits for Harry to decide what happens next. The man who refused to serve another Dark Lord. The forest is full of whispers and wand light when Harry Potter falls. Regulus hears the spell before he sees it. That voice. Scream of green. The way the war itself seems to flinch. For a heartbeat, he is back in another underground cavern, watching another boy walk toward death. It's that story, and repeating. Watches Harry crumple in the clearing, body slack, glasses askew. Silence that follows cuts through the grief like a knife. The eaters stare. Giants shift uneasily, and the snakes in Voldemort's magic seem to coil tighter. Eating. Voldemort steps forward, savouring the moment. Withdrawn for a victory speech he has rehearsed for decades. Regulus moves first. Doesn't scream, doesn't beg. Walks out from the ranks of the defenders, cloak torn, blood on his cheek, wand steady. His choice is simple. Refuse to kneel in a cave. He will not kneel in a forest. Enough, he says. His voice carries, amplified by a sharp, wordless spell. Want them to see? Let them see the truth. It's his turn. Students, order members, teachers who chose this side because Harry and Hermione and Sirius once looked them in the eye and called them people, not weapons. Stare at Regulus Black, the Death Eater who walked away. Points his wand, not at Voldemort, but at the ruined corpse of Nagini, still smoking from Neville's stroke. He is not immortal, Regulus calls. Last Horcrux is dead. Diary, the ring, locket, cup, diadem, snake, all gone. Stands here on borrowed power and failing luck. A murmur runs through the crowd. Horcrux, the forbidden word, the secret Dumbledore hoarded in another life. What if the entire battlefield hears it now? In the night, everything changed. Regulus doesn't give Voldemort time to twist it. I was there when he made one of them, he lies smoothly, weaponizing old knowledge. I stole one from him. I watched it die. He is breakable. He can be beaten. He has been beaten. Voldemort's face contorts. You dare? I refuse. Regulus cuts in, magic thrumming around him. To ever serve another Dark Lord. Not you, not Dumbledore's secrets, not fear. Behind him, the defenders straighten. Wands lift. House elves grip kitchen knives and snapped wands. Centaurs edge closer through the trees. The war tilts. And then the forest shudders. Harry walks back into it. From King's Cross and the white silence, from the choice to go on, he returns with ash on his soul and fire in his eyes. Regulus feels it before he sees him. The familiar pull of the boy he raised as a weapon and a son. Clear the field, Regulus snaps, already turning, already dueling. Spells crack the air. Shield charms bloom in overlapping arcs as he and Hermione and Remus carve a corridor through chaos, driving civilians, wounded students, and terrified first years toward the castle. He stuns a charging werewolf, drags a bleeding Hufflepuff behind a fallen column, snaps a curse off his own ribs. Every motion is penance. Every spell is a refusal. By the time Harry steps into the Great Hall to face Voldemort, the space around them is ringed but clear. No screaming children between them, no hostages. Just the war boiled down to 2 wands and all the choices that led here. Regulus stands at the edge, creature at his heel, watching the final duel he has spent decades engineering. He knows the wand law. He knows the Horcruxes. He knows the prophecy Dumbledore tried to own. When Voldemort falls, body slack, eyes empty, the hall goes dead quiet. People will say it was Harry's triumph, the boy who lived, the man who came back. But in the stunned silence after the last spell, as dust drifts and children sob and the mark on Regulus's arm lies cold and powerless, another truth settles over the survivors. This ending is also the work of a boy who once walked into a cave and chose to die rather than serve, and then survived, and spent the rest of his life making sure no one he loved would ever have to make that choice alone. Pattern break. Epilogue as a war council, not a train platform. The war ends in a roar of spells and falling stone. The epilogue begins in silence, not a train platform, not steam and children's laughter. A house, number 12 Grimmauld Place, rebuilt brick by stubborn brick until the old war mansion became something else entirely, a neutral ground. Years have passed since the night everything changed in the Great Hall. No more 4-tower segregation. We keep starting the war at 11. Across from her, Draco Malfoy, dressed in sober grey rather than aristocratic peacock, taps the parchment with a measured hand. And creature rights embedded in the same bill, he adds. You can't preach unity while treating house elves as property, or werewolves as weapons, or goblins as convenient bankers. The word lands heavy. He stares at the table rather than at Griphook, seated further down. What if we're moving too fast? Kingsley asks, voice rough from years of speeches. You're trying to rewrite Hogwarts, the Ministry, and centuries of law in a decade. Regulus Black leans back in his chair at the head of the table, the position that should have been ceremonial and isn't. There are threads of silver in his hair now. The dark mark on his arm is a faint, ugly shadow, a reminder and a warning. Head of a reformed aura division, his days are spent hunting down cursed lockets and blood-soaked tomes instead of Death Eaters. We don't have a decade, he says quietly. We have the memory of this war while it still cuts through the grief like a knife, while children still wake up screaming, while parents still remember digging through rubble for their sons. This is that story, Kingsley. Change made when the scars are still fresh enough to ache. McGonagall's mouth tightens, but she nods. Hogwarts will trial the mixed houses. I'll take the Howlers. Patton interrupts. Because this isn't the golden fade-out. It's policy drafts and raised voices. It's Creature, older and proud, serving tea to goblins and auras in the same room. It's Hermione arguing for a Department of Magical Creature Representation. It's Draco volunteering to oversee reparations for families ruined by Death Eater confiscations. Penance written in ink instead of blood. Later, when the crowd thins and the fire burns low, Harry finds Regulus alone in the doorway of the old drawing room, staring at the tapestry that once screamed his shame. You hate these meetings, Harry says, not a question. Regulus huffs a breath that almost becomes a laugh. I trained to follow, not to govern. My best spell used to be obedience. His gaze shifts to Harry. Yet here we are. Head of Dark Artifacts. Guardian of the Boy Who Lived. Accidental politician. You chose this, Harry answers. You walked into that cave. You walked out. You came back for me. For all of this. Regulus studies him for a long moment. The silence between them is full of every battle they survived, every body they couldn't save. Our war is over, he says at last. Voldemort is dead. The mark is cold. But the work… He gestures toward the echoing house, the muffled voices still debating in distant rooms. The work is just beginning. Harry steps to his side, shoulder to shoulder, both of them facing the tapestry, the future, the weight of a world they intend to remake. What if, Harry murmurs, this is the part that matters most? Regulus does not look away. Then, he says, we don't stop. What this AU changes about Harry. And about us. They stand before the tapestry. But this is bigger than one family's scorched silk. This is the moment the story tilts. The night everything changed was not Godric's Hollow in this world. It was the cave, the locket, the choice of a 19-year-old who refused to die a coward in green and silver. What if that one choice rewrote everything that came after? Here, Regulus survives the Inferi and the poisoned potion. He staggers out of the cave with Creature's arm in his, a stolen Horcrux in his pocket, and the absolute certainty that Voldemort must fall. He fakes his death, vanishes into the shadows of his own house, and when Harry's parents are murdered, he steps forward as guardian. Not Dumbledore, not the Dursleys, the heir of Black. So Harry grows up under black wards instead of Privet Drive's fists. He learns to bow to portraits without believing their blood creed. He practices dueling in the drawing room where dark artifacts once sat. Each spell a refusal to be what his grandparents wanted. He hears the word Horcrux before he ever hears Hogwarts Express. The war is not a bedtime story for him. It is homework, history, and inheritance. That changes the boy. Canon Harry survives by instinct and stubborn courage, running on empty, always reacting. This Harry walks into Hogwarts already knowing that power and politics are the same language spoken in different rooms. He reads the prophet for subtext. He watches the Sorting Hat and understands that houses are weapons as much as homes. Whether he ends up in Gryffindor, Slytherin, or straddling both worlds, he does not wait for adults to hand him answers. He hunts them. Prepared, loved, politically educated, he carries agency like a second wand. When a basilisk screams through the pipes, he doesn't just charge, he organizes. When Umbridge carves words into skin, he doesn't only rebel, he builds a paper trail, a witness list, a case. Responsibility for him is not martyrdom, it is strategy. He has been taught that saving people is not enough if you leave the system that killed them intact. At the center of that lesson stands Regulus, the boy who once took the dark mark because obedience was easier than defiance. The young man who walked into a cursed cave to undo his own mistake. In this timeline, he lives long enough to do more than die bravely. He becomes a guardian who refuses to let Harry worship him. He lays out his sins in the cold kitchen light. Torture missions, cowardice, silence. and lets Harry stare at the reality of who raised him. That truth cuts through the grief like a knife, but it also breaks the black pattern. For generations, this family bent the knee to Dark Lords. Regulus is the one who says no, and keeps saying it, year after year, in front of a child who is watching his every move. He teaches Harry that redemption is not a single act in a cave. It is daily, grinding work. It is choosing, over and over, not to become the weapon you were bred to be. And Dumbledore?
He is no longer the untouchable general. Without the leverage of blood wards and ignorance, he must negotiate. He cannot drip-feed prophecy and half-truths to a boy who has already read the old black grimoires on soul magic. The silence that once defined Harry's childhood is gone. In its place, difficult conversations at the dining table, arguments about risk, lines in the sand. This is that story. A world where the boy who lived is not a sacrificial lamb raised in the dark, but a young strategist raised in the aftermath of someone else's failure. Where family is not biology, but the people who tell you the truth when it would be easier to lie. Where second chances are not neat or clean, but bloody, exhausting, and real. So what does that say about us? Maybe that we are not only the victims of the wars we inherit, but the authors of what comes next. That being loved does not spare you from grief, but it arms you for it. That the most radical magic in this universe is not a killing curse or a prophecy. It is an adult kneeling in front of a child and saying, "Here is what I did. Here is what it cost. Now, what will you choose to do with the world I've handed you?" Because in the end, that's the question Regulus hands Harry, and the question this universe hands us. Your turn, building the next what if. So now it's your turn to stand in that doorway with Harry, to take the question Regulus hands him and twist it, stretch it, turn it toward every corner of this universe and ask, what if? What if Harry had still been sorted into Gryffindor, even with Regulus's voice in his ear and black family expectations coiled around his spine? Would he walk into that tower carrying Slytherin secrets under a lion banner, watching Ron and Hermione and Neville through the eyes of a boy raised among ancient tapestries and whispered war stories? Or would the distance between his house and his home cut through the grief like a knife when the lies and losses start to pile up? What if Regulus didn't make it out of the war after all? Picture it. Harry, raised in Grimmauld Place, trained by a man who knows Horcruxes and prophecy and the cost of the dark mark, only to watch that man fall in some nameless corridor, wand still warm, eyes open and unseeing. How does a Harry who has already lost one black to Voldemort walk into the graveyard in fourth year? Does he scream when he sees the cauldron? Or does he stare, cold and ready, because he has been rehearsing Regulus's death in his mind for years? And Draco. What if Draco never switched sides in this timeline? No wavering on the astronomy tower, no secret guilt, no desperate shaking wand. Just a Malfoy heir who watched Harry Black move through Slytherin House with Regulus's name behind him and decided with icy certainty to stand on the opposite side of every line. What does that do to the duels in the corridors, to the unforgivable curses in the war, to the moment wands cross for the last time? Tell me in the comments which changed moment won't let you go. Was it the sorting, when the hat hesitated and the great hall held its breath? The chamber, with Regulus at Harry's shoulder facing a basilisk and a diary that should never have existed? The graveyard, where a weaker Voldemort rose from the cauldron because one locket in a cave had already been destroyed by a man the world thought dead. Which character do you want to drag into the light and follow deeper? Is it Regulus himself? Every scar and spell and sleepless night? Is it a Slytherin first year watching Harry Black
rewrite what their house can be? Is it a ministry clerk tracking the quiet, terrifying pattern of black money and black influence, reshaping the war from the inside? This is that story, but it can fracture into 100 more. Maybe your version is a pure Regulus point of view saga, from the cave to the cradle to the battlefield. Maybe it's Slytherin House as a slow burn drama, every choice in that common room a spark that could start a different fire. Maybe it's a political thriller in the Ministry, where old families and new laws collide under the shadow of a dark lord who is suddenly not as inevitable as prophecy once promised. Bring your fanfic Rex, your art prompts, your headcanons about Harry's pure blood manners at a Gryffindor table, or creature guarding a nursery door, or Draco watching, furious, as Slytherin begins to slip from his family's grasp. Drop them all below. The war is not over when the video ends. The story just moves into your hands. Because the night everything changed for Regulus and Harry is only one version of this universe. The next version might start with you. Subscribe for more broken timelines and found families. Because the night everything changed for Regulus and Harry is only one version of this universe. The next version might start with you. This is where this channel lives, in the quiet after the spell, in the questions that cut through the grief like a knife. What if the wrong person died? What if the right person made a different choice? What if the war bent, not because of a prophecy, but because one adult refused to abandon one child? Here, the niche is simple and ruthless. Deep dive what-if timelines in the wizarding world, pulled apart year by year. Found families built out of wreckage. Alternate wars where strategy matters as much as destiny. Emotional payoffs. Canon left dead on the floor. If you stay, you're not just watching a story. You're watching a whole map of possible stories unfold. If Regulus can walk out of that cave alive and claim Harry from the ashes, then Sirius and Remus can walk out of that courtroom free and raise him and Hermione together. You've seen that world on this channel. The Marauder household turned into a war room. Wolfsbane steaming on the stove. A Gryffindor table crowded with Black and Lupin and Granger. The question is not if it could happen. The question is which version you want to see next. Maybe it's a redeemed Snape, forced into mentorship, staring at a Harry who already knows about Horcruxes because Regulus told him first. Maybe it's a Snape who chooses, early, to protect a child instead of a dead woman's memory, and the war shifts in the shadows of his classroom. Or maybe we go further back, to a Voldemort who stood in that orphanage window and made one different choice, and the entire wizarding world never learns the word Horcrux because it never needs to. This channel takes those fractures in canon and follows them all the way through. 7 school years, every corridor, every battle. If you want more long-form breakdowns of timelines where creature guards nurseries, where Slytherin banners hang over a different kind of resistance, where the Order has to reckon with a living black heir, this is where you find them. So if you haven't yet, make a choice of your own.